Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow underway. The Monday edition has arrived, and we're ready. Billy Liucci, founder, co-owner of TexAgs.com, who broke the story of Jimbo Fisher's firing in College Station with Texas A&M. He will be with us in an hour from right now. Plus, David Pollack on today's show. He jumps in the mix, former Georgia Bulldog, former NFL pass rusher for the Bengals, and formerly with Game Day. He's on with us later in the show as well. Chad, we're certainly thankful for all of our viewers and listeners across the OutKick network. If you want to chat with Chad, he's back.
I'm back, baby.
He's back in the chat currently.
I am
Head
back.
over to the YouTube page right now. Search out OutKick. Subscribe while you're there and let your opinions fly, because we had plenty to dive into today, from suspensions to firings, game-winning drives, and, trolling as well, is how I would describe Jim Harbaugh today.
Well, I hesitate to say that Jim Harbaugh is trolling anyone. I think Jim Harbaugh, Hutton, is the rare breed that is so self-involved in his own brain and with his own program and what he sees right in front of him. The lack of self-awareness from Jim Harbaugh is so startling. Lane Kiffin would be trolling people by saying something that we're about to hear.
Not fans.
I believe Jim Harbaugh is saying everything he's saying completely straight-faced, with not an ounce of regret on his conscience. This is a guy who believes everything he's saying, regardless of how ridiculous everything sounds. And Michigan people, quote-unquote, Michigan men of the world right now, sound utterly ridiculous in their defenses of their own program. It is, we're talking, the Hollywood actors are off strike now. This is Hollywood movie level drama from Michigan people about all of this. It is insanity. And everyone else in America sees it. Michigan men and women cannot see it in themselves right now. It's crazy.
This is a teaser for what will be the Big Ten championship speech at the podium as Tony Petitti hands him the trophy, quite frankly. After suspending Harbaugh for the remainder of the regular season, where he's not on the sideline on game day, and he's not allowed on the premises, not allowed in the venue for the stadium, wherever they may be playing. Coming up, it'll be Maryland. But this past weekend, it was Penn State. And Michigan handled Penn State. We'll recap that in a moment, but this is Jim Harbaugh's media availability earlier, where he's discussing Michigan's win and the team that went out there and dominated the Nittany Lions.
The perseverance, and then the stalwartness of these guys. Watching, I would have to say, everybody. It's got to be America's team. It's got to be America's team. America loves a team that beats the odds, beats the adversity, overcomes what the naysayers and critics, so-called experts think. That's my favorite kind of team. And watching it from that view on the television, it was finally people get to see what I see every day, in these players and these coaches.
So there's Jim Harbaugh speaking to the media today, discussing what his team did without him there against Penn State, against James Franklin, and a Nittany Lions team that really was not up to par with the caliber of the Wolverines. Chad, because we're about to dive in on how ridiculous this sounds. But what he's doing, I think, is as smart as what Kirby Smart did a year ago, where somehow he convinced his team that no one believed they could win. And they were repeating this the entire way to a back-to-back championship performance. I do think it will be looked back upon as a brilliant move, because they from the quarterback on down are retweeting, reposting things, on anything that J.J. McCarthy's posting that on social on Fridays. The suspension is handed down. Oh, by the way, while Michigan is in the air, if you want to talk about trolling, that's exactly what that was. I think this is more or less what we're going to hear whenever Jim Harbaugh is hoisting the Big Ten championship trophy in Indianapolis, and Tony Petitti is going to hand it out to him. That is going to be a scene.
Yeah, they're the best team in the Big Ten. from what they've done on the field. I don't know many people that's disputing that right now. I have a hard time with this because, first off, Jim Harbaugh, if you continue to miss games and your team doesn't drop off at all, that's a question mark with Jim Harbaugh at some point. That's a great testament to your staff, but I'm not seeing many issues without Jim Harbaugh on game days with the Michigan team. So either credit to the staff or not, or too much credit is given to Jim Harbaugh as a head coach. I would be a little bit leery if your team's going to go on and win the next 3 games without you, if in fact that's the court order in all of this. If that happens, that doesn't make Jim Harbaugh look as good.
I think we'll find the answer to that when they're actually in a tight game.
Well, they should have been in a tight game on Saturday.
Well,
we'll get to that because I've got a James Franklin piece of this I want to talk about.
Their head coach was
also
on the sideline too. Yeah,
guys, what we're telling you is there's a lot to get to over the weekend. Jimbo Fisher's been fired. Mississippi State fired a coach before a full season where he was the head coach. 2 coaches who faced off in a 51-13 game. Both sides of that blowout are fired in the next couple days. There's a lot happening in college football, but the main story is the main story, and that is the Michigan Wolverines. They're crazy. Michigan people sound completely and utterly insane. But here is what's great about this if you're a Michigan fan. Michigan players absolutely love it. And recruits that you're after, I'm sure they love it. And this is an instance where Jim Harbaugh's utter insanity is going to help him with this team. And I think it's going to help him with recruits that they're recruiting. Because there is kind of this us against the world type thing. But it's so funny to me that the us in this situation are the violators, right? It's the whistleblowers out there and everyone saying, hey, that's wrong. That is somehow the negative part of this story. The victim is the perpetrators in this. It's Michigan that broke the rules. It's Michigan that cheated. It's Michigan that has not denied any of the wrongdoing by Connor Stallions. And then it's Jim Harbaugh and people who coach for him or currently coach with him sobbing in front of cameras, acting like the guy got a cancer diagnosis instead of being suspended because his program is, wait for it, guilty of cheating. However you want to slice it, they're guilty of cheating. They haven't denied any of it. What they're trying to convince the public is that somehow their head coach didn't know. Then ask yourself, should he have known? But ultimately, none of it's going to matter because Michigan is steamrolling the competition. Jim Harbaugh has got this team completely bought in and united. That coaching staff has people completely bought in and united. Their president, which we're going to get to a little bit later, is completely bought in and united. I've said it before, I'll say it again. No more, don't tell me about Michigan, man. The defense of everything that's gone on here shows me you're just like everyone else. And that's fine. It's fine. It's college football. It is win or else. It is huge business. I get all of that. Don't talk to me about integrity ever again on any subject. Don't want to hear about it, Michigan. You've sold out to go win the national title, and you've got a team to do it. So go and do it. And Hutton, I'm with you. This is the Big Ten champion right now from what I've seen. That defense is phenomenal.
Not even close.
They're able to run the ball 27 straight times and win a game on the road.
8 pass attempts.
Incredible. Look, it is a tough football team.
That's trolling Penn State too, by the way.
Yeah, they are unified. They are ready to go. So I think they're the best team in the Big Ten, but this whole us against the world, we're America's team now is laughable.
Well,
that is the last thing that's happening.
It is us. It is their mantra is us against the Big Ten.
Yeah,
and the conference, because what we learned, and I want to get your reaction to the suspension. What we've learned is Tony Petitti's suspending him, and then yes, we know that Harbaugh would have known, but what has the Big Ten told us? What has Petitti told us about what they can show that connects it back to him? That's the key here. And the NCAA stands back and is doing their investigation. While that's ongoing, the conference steps in and suspends him for the rest of the regular season from game day. So while I think it doesn't help them that he's not there on game day. He's there every single day during practice and preparation, and he will be there on the sideline for the Big Ten championship game. And they'll carry him out on the players' shoulders, Chad.
Oh, yeah.
That will be the scene. And Petitti and company stepped in and tried to do something because the NCAA wouldn't. But in order to do something, you have to show more than what the NCAA is not showing us right now. And the 3-game suspension, I thought would return. I thought it would be we would see the injunction, a temporary restraining order. That didn't happen. And there's a hearing coming up on Friday where they'll go in front of a judge and see if they can get the temporary restraining order. But if you didn't approve it last week because of damages and irreparable harm, why would all of a sudden you go ahead and do it now if the coach has already started the suspension against Penn State and Happy Valley? I'm curious their argument compared to what they've already done, but this is the chip on the shoulder that Michigan now is deadline focused on proving everyone wrong. And it's almost like to me, this is more a WWE playing the heel, going in front of the crowd and saying, hey, we're your favorite tag team group. We are your favorite. We're the faction that everyone's behind, and everyone knows that's just not the case, and you're looking for the boos. I mean, I think it's more of a jab at Petiti than it is truly believing that everyone loves them, because they're hearing it from everywhere except for their own fan base.
Well, and one area where Michigan is correct in all of this. Now, again, Michigan is not denying any of the evidence on Connor Stallions and what they've done.
Right.
They did it. Clearly, they have all the evidence where Tony Petiti knows exactly what they've done. The due process is over when it comes to that. They're guilty of it, and they're not denying it. But what Michigan is saying is, you are stepping out of protocol and going against the NCAA when for years – what every team has done in every conference is let the NCAA investigation play out and let them rule what's going to happen. So I can understand Michigan saying, you're going to some extreme ends to do something to us right now, and we don't feel it's warranted here. We should wait for the NCAA investigation. Even though Michigan's not denying it, they know what they're guilty of, and they know what the NCAA has on them. So I can understand Michigan's part on this. And here is where Michigan is correct, but where they're not going to actually get any follow-through. This sets a precedent, and they said it in the release that, hey, buckle up, big boys, because now that you've done this, I want every other head coach in the conference on edge. Because the moment we find something on you, we expect Tony Petiti in the Big Ten office to act as such and suspend your head coach or do something midseason. It is open season on everyone else in the Big Ten. The problem, though, with this is, Hutton, it's going to be hard to find an instance where it is 13 against 1. There's always going to be some dissenting opinion. There's alliances in coaching. There are programs who maybe know they're up to some of the same stuff that don't want to set that precedent. It's the same reason NFL owners don't want to burn another one, because they don't want to be the one eventually burned. So they're slow to act and that, right? This was a case where Tony Petiti got every other program on board. 13 against 1 against Michigan. I don't know that you're going to find that again.
Well, it was 13 against 1 after 2 against 1 presented evidence. And then mainly Ohio State through the private firm.
Well, we don't know. They're denying all of that, and they're saying that they didn't do it. I don't know who brought it, but I'm saying the evidence that was presented, once everyone saw it, it was 13 against 1.
And Michigan's going to be digging for evidence on everyone else now.
They are, but...
And if you present the evidence, you have the court of public opinion that will jump on that side if it's leaked the proper way and it's breaking news on. It doesn't necessarily have to come from Michigan immediately. It can come from Staples.
Yeah.
And then you have the news that everyone's reacting to, and then, oh, by the way, it's coming from Michigan.
Well, but then you got to get all 13 schools on board, though, too. And I think that's the hard part now is Michigan's going to start slinging some mud on other programs and saying, Tony Petiti, act. Do what you did to us. And I understand that if you're Michigan doing that.
It's not just Petiti. It's the other 13. You also have to stand up to that standard.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but they're not.
Well,
I think they're all against Michigan and Jim Harbaugh in this story. My question I'm asking is, what is the story that is so unique, that is different from everyone else, that will get everyone else in the conference to stand up and say, you must act right now? I'm having a hard time. It's not going to be a paying scandal for players or anything like that. It's so common. I'm trying to think of what that would be, where every other team would agree that you should get this team, regardless if it's Michigan or anyone else. that you should go after this team. But I do agree with Michigan when they say, hey, you started a new precedent now. So this is the new rule of law moving forward. We're going to act in that way too. And I think everyone else should be on edge in the conference. I get what they're saying.
It's not just sign steal. It's not just scouting off campus. This is the sportsmanship policy that's very open and vague in how you interpret it. So it doesn't have to be that big of a deal. It just has to be sportsmanship.
Juwan Howard got suspended for 3 games last year for getting in a fight with Greg Gard at Wisconsin in a little post-game altercation. Remember when he was going after him in the handshake line. So, I mean,
was that through the Big Ten?
Yes. Michigan's no stranger to that. That was the Big Ten at the time, Kevin Warren, as the commissioner, and that was their sportsmanship policy at play. So this has happened. You know, people have been suspended, coaches, players, through the sportsmanship policy. I just – look, I think Michigan could absolutely, if they get good intel, turn other Big Ten schools in and force Tony Petitti into an uncomfortable spot to act one way or the other. I just think this is one where I look at any story. I think it's really hard to get every member of a conference united with an opinion to enforce a rule against one team in the conference. Because there's usually either an alliance or 1 or 2 programs saying, let's hold off a bit. I don't know if we want to set this up for anything in the future.
Is it easy if you kick everyone's ass to get everyone aligned against you?
It's easier to be mad at them for sure. And that could be part of it also.
Hey, we love emotion in sports. There's emotion on both sides. And the way Michigan is presenting it, it's interesting. It's odd. And they're apparently America's team. More on that next.
Quote, a good state champion caliber high school boys team would smoke the best team in the WNBA. Then this weekend, after the video was posted and the critics, of course, came for him, he doubled down on what he said, posting this on X. Quote, it's sexist to say women's basketball players aren't as good as men's. That was a question, obviously. It's my opinion, and I'm putting $1 million behind it. If I'm wrong, the WNBA team can take my money and make more from one game than they do for the entire season. Okay, so let's get into this because obviously there's a lot of people out there who are just assuming that Clay is being sexist, that he is trying to really punk the WNBA because let's be honest, the ratings for the WNBA aren't great, which is exactly why Clay made the joke at the end of that. If you were to give them $1 million for losing the bet, that would be more than the WNBA would make regularly for one game under normal circumstances. But the fact remains that men and women biologically super different, and that's what he's talking about. We even look at a boys' high school basketball team and the makeup of their players, what they're able to do, their size, their skills, and look at the WNBA players who are oftentimes much older. They're professional basketball players, but still, the level of competition would not at all be on the same playing field. So, Chris, let's get into that. What is your take on this? The fact that people would say that, Clay, you're being sexist, when reality remains men and women, super different, even at very different ages, different places in their careers, there would be no matchup whatsoever.
I don't even think it's questionable. I love that Clay took it to him. I think a lot of times silence speaks louder than words. The Las Vegas Aces haven't said anything in response yet. Mm-hmm. So, look, you're right. I dug into the rosters, the Las Vegas Aces, and then, look, I've spent some time training at IMG Academy. I work with athletes at a school called Lou High, which is one of the top programs in the country. And we have guards 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". We're on the Aces. The tallest players are 6'3" and 6'4", and those are their bigs. So they don't even have anybody to really account for the bigs on the male teams. And I don't know that it's how in any way is this a sexist thing to say. Yeah.
Well, I have a woman, I think, who will be able to help answer this question. She is super smart. She's super intelligent. I am a big fan of her. Everybody, you're also a big fan of her. We all are. It just has to be said. So let's go ahead and bring in the woman of the hour, Riley Gaines. Hello, Riley. I'm happy to see you again. I feel like I get to spend so much time with you these days.
I know, right? Very good to see you, and I will say it is rainy here as well, which just sucks.
Okay, so are you, I know the last time we talked, you were like bouncing all over the place. Where are you right now?
I'm actually in Nashville, but headed to New York today, so I'll be on deck.
Okay, well, welcome. You get to go from rain to rain.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, Riley, let's get into the topic that we were just discussing. Obviously, Clay being a little bit sarcastic in the way that he framed the question, but he's saying he's willing to make a bet that the WNBA champions, still being the champions, professional basketball players, would not be able to hold a candle to any high school boys basketball team in the country. Is he being sexist, or is he just speaking facts that men and women are very different in terms of what they are capable of athletically?
Boom. Right there. It's not sexist to say men and women are different. Like you said, it's reality, it's truth, it's common sense, it's logic, it's reasoning. We all know it.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hope you're doing great on this Monday. Join us in the chat. Chad's there right now on YouTube.
Chat's fired up.
Really?
They're ready.
Is our guy back?
A lot of Michigan defenders in the chat. The kind of Michigan people going.
It is.
You got the Michigan in one corner. You got the Michigan defenders. In the other corner, you've got the rest of America. But according to Jim Harbaugh, America's team is wearing maize and blue. That's who everybody should be rooting for. This is an American tale as old as time, is what Jim Harbaugh is telling. You know, the classic upstart underdog Cinderella story. That's the all-time winningest program in college football history. That one. That's what Americans really gravitate towards.
Man, they dominated. Just 287 yards, 8 pass attempts, 7 offensive linemen, a lot of different formation, 7 offensive linemen many times in game situations, 32 rushing attempts in the second half alone. They just lined up. And what was the consecutive runs against Penn State?
28 at one point, I think. 27-28 in a row.
Yeah, I mean,
it's crazy.
Just manhandled Penn State. And then it led to the sob, Moore wept. Sherrone Moore, the offensive coordinator and interim head coach, while Harbaugh is on suspension. What was that? I've heard praise for this and emotions. This was? I mean, what are you crying about?
He thanked God. He thanked the good Lord, and then immediately says, "I effing love Jim Harbaugh. I love the bleep out of you." This was something off Saturday Night Live when I'm watching it. I thought it was pure comedy. Watching this guy just completely lose it. I mean, when he thanked God, it looked as if he was thanking Jim Harbaugh, as if he thinks Jim Harbaugh is Jesus Christ, as he was thanking
put him in the, yeah.
He is crying like the guy died on the flight over. I thought for a second Jim Harbaugh took a private flight and the plane crashed. The way he was talking about it, I'm like, he's just at the hotel. He's 5 minutes away watching in a banquet room somewhere. You can go celebrate with him. It was one of the strangest post-game interviews I've ever seen. Now, let's get to the flip side of this, because you got Sherrone Moore weeping after the game and putting on this weird display of F-bombs mixed with thanking God, and he just beat James Franklin in that game by running the ball 28 consecutive times. Hutton, I am convinced you or I could have been head coach in that game and said, get behind that big offensive line and let's run the football with Blake Corum and win this game against Penn State. Looked really easy for Michigan.
Corum LLC, by the way.
And that is not a great reflection of James Franklin. Now, I've also said it's not exactly a compliment to Jim Harbaugh that they look the same when he's not on the sideline, but that's neither here nor there. This is a bad look for James Franklin. And here is what I would say for James Franklin. I think it is very clear now with the time he spent at Penn State, he's never going to beat Michigan and Ohio State and be a better program than those two. If all things are equal, he is not the man to do that for you. But he is good enough now to lose 2 games a year and beat everyone else on the schedule, other than Michigan and Ohio State. And in a new era of a 12-team playoff,
yeah,
that's good enough. I'll also say this, and I want to sort of warn Penn State fans about all this. And look, I've had, going back to when James Franklin was the coach at Vanderbilt, I've had a personal history with James Franklin. It hasn't always been great.
And this show.
and this show absolutely has had a personal history with James Franklin. Has not always been great. I know he got an attitude with the reporter after the game and had a little back and forth. We've had similar back and forths with him. But credit where credit is due, and this comes across maybe as a diss. It's not. You can do a hell of a lot worse than James Franklin if you're Penn State. Buyer beware. Because most of the time when you fire a guy who's losing 2 or 3 games a year, you're not going to do better with that next hire. Maybe it's a couple more coaches. Maybe it's one coach that bridged the gap. But you rarely do better when you go to that extreme to fire a guy who's only losing to 2 programs. And in some years, maybe 3 games. So while I think James Franklin has shown himself to be what he is at Penn State, which is not good enough to truly compete with Michigan and Ohio State on an annual basis, losing 2 games a year, which that's kind of what they are at their ceiling, is not all that bad. So I don't think Penn State should do anything. I don't think they should act rash, Hutton. I think they should probably stay the course. But let me highlight this. Going forward on 4th down, horrendous decision. Went for 2 points way too early in the game to start. Then went for 2 points again late in the game, too early, down 9 at that point, where you want to extend the game, make it an 8-point game.
You would think it's something more would do, not him.
Yeah, you don't want to have to go for 2 until you have to go for 2. So they essentially ended the game by going for 2 down 9 and didn't get it, and then it's over. It's 2 possessions at that point. Then they don't get the onside kick. So, look, a weird game for James Franklin. I think Penn State has been pretty inept in both performances against Ohio State and Michigan, not just losing the game, but they've looked dead upon arrival in those games, especially offensively. Drew Aller may turn himself into an NFL quarterback who's really good. He is not ready for games against defenses like that. That he showed that in those 2 games. But I would warn Penn State fans that are pissed off and angry today, you can do a lot worse than what James Franklin has done. He's been a pretty good coach for you. But with the new format, that may be good enough to get you in the playoff in a lot of years.
But what does that, and you're right, but what does that mean for the Penn State fan who is invested with everything, emotionally, financially, all of it? At some point, and I think that the average fan realizes, just like we do, Franklin is good, not elite, but a very good coach. He's 1-12 against AP top 5 teams. So if you're even thinking about the college football playoff, I mean, you're going into a situation where okay, then we'll go into the college football playoff and it's expanded to 12, and then we'll do what we do against AP top 5 teams, lose. So you have to ask, has this plateaued, or is there another level? Because what he did at Vanderbilt was win back-to-back seasons with 9 wins during a stretch where the SEC East was really down. And if you're not going to win in this Big Ten against Michigan and Ohio State, if you're not going to beat Michigan without Jim Harbaugh on the sideline, you're not going to anytime soon. And the decisions and the chasing of points and everything, and then the criticizing the reporter jumping in about the 2-point conversion rather than just kick it. It was all bizarre. And Chad, it was like he was facing the pressure. And when you realize he's facing the pressure to beat Michigan that day, what do you think Ryan Day is going to feel like whenever he's not facing Jim Harbaugh? But he's got to beat Michigan.
Well, let me start by saying I think Jim Harbaugh is going to coach in that game because I think they will get the temporary restraining order. And we're going to talk to Amy Dash tomorrow about the possibility of that happening. But I do feel like that's going to be the result on Friday, and he'll coach against Maryland and Ohio State. But Hutton, answer your question.
But I don't know why they didn't get it
of pressure.
First.
Well, they wanted to. They didn't have enough time. They said, we got to have time to review everything. We're not going to turn this around this morning to get this thing done. So they said your hearing is going to be Friday where they can review all the materials on both sides. So I think we'll get an answer on Friday. And I think he'll be allowed to coach again, but we'll ask Amy Dash about that. To answer your question, though, Hutton, enormous pressure on Ryan Day. I mean, enormous pressure because now you're also perceived as the whistleblower. Whether you are or aren't, and I know you're denying that it's not Ryan Day's brother that did the investigation and hasn't really completely denied that you weren't one of the ones who turned them in, but you were looked as the whistleblower and a tattletale on Michigan. You've got the coach suspended right now. They're under a lot of heat. And now you're going to play them head-to-head here in a couple weeks. That's great drama. And I think it's a lot of pressure on Ryan Day. This is the 10th year at Penn State for James Franklin. And Hutton, you asked a good question about if you're fully invested, if you're a booster, if you're someone with season tickets, how do you feel about this? I think you're probably very lukewarm and sort of fatigued at this point.
They fire their OC
with James Franklin, right?
Yesterday, yeah.
I mean, he got rid of his OC, but you're probably looking at saying, can we not move the ball better against these teams? We get a big elite quarterback prospect in, and he looks very pedestrian against. Can we not be better or do more? And I think you probably sleep on it and you realize, hey, this is kind of where you are right now. It's tough to expect to pass one of those two programs. But yeah, no, I think some fatigue is setting in, and there will come a time where you have to ask the question, hey, are we good enough here? Or is it time to admit it's just never going to go to the next level? And let's try something different to see if someone can get this program to the next level. I don't think that time is now. I don't think they should go that route, but they're going to start asking those questions.
Well, if you don't go that route, you're going to – this sounds crazy. It's raise season for college football head coaches. And we will see his name mentioned. He will make sure – James Franklin will make sure his name is mentioned in job opening.
Well, he's trying to get, I'm sure, a mention at the Texas A&M
no doubt, but everyone
right now,
is.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Everyone, even if you don't want the gig.
No, absolutely.
You want your name mentioned for that gig. So, yeah, so you're either keeping him around and you're giving him a pay bump, or you're not and he's elsewhere. And can you do better? So I don't – basing it off of what they've done against Ohio State and Michigan, no, they haven't done anything if you're just basing it off of those matchups.
Yeah.
But what he's done with the program and where the expectation can be with the 12-team playoff, going back to your point, do you buy into the fact that they're going to be any different than what they've been against the rest of the country who's great and elite? Because they haven't been.
No, I don't buy that they're taking another step. I don't see that a program, and I don't see Penn State under James Franklin as a program that is a sleeping giant ready to erupt and be a national power ahead of Michigan and Ohio State or anyone else that's coming to the Big Ten. I don't see that. I see him as a very good program that's going to win 8-9 games a season, and then in good years get you 10 wins and 10-2. And Penn State's going to have to decide whether or not that's good enough. I see James Franklin as a prime candidate, and Penn State, quite frankly, as a shaking hands, parting of ways. You need a fresh start. We need a fresh start. We don't want to fire you. But if Arkansas is willing to overpay for you, go ahead. We're not going to stop you. That Walmart money is calling. Go there. I could see a job like that coming open that does have resources and money and that is pretty desperate right now to be relevant. That would say, I mean, if you're an Arkansas fan, would you take James Franklin? I think absolutely. Given his track record as a head coach, you go and do something like that, and then that could just kind of rid Penn State of whatever lukewarm feelings they had about James Franklin in that moment too. But you mentioned, Hutton, he's played this game a bunch of times before.
Oh, yeah.
Flirted with Tennessee. He's flirted with other jobs. I think he was on a plane in Knoxville and toured some things with Tennessee, or at least definitely got deep into conversations with them at one point.
And he's not the only one. Everyone does it.
Mike Gundy's done it multiple times with Tennessee.
But if you decide not, you will be giving him a pay bump in some way.
And here's the other thing. He's played the we need more resources, we need better facilities, we need more NIL money. He's played that card publicly before. He can't do it again.
Yeah.
Your fan base and your boosters, they're not going to listen to that again, especially given the two performances against teams that were legitimately elite on your schedule. You got no more opportunities against elite teams this year, and you've been there 10 years. So I think everybody knows what the program is under James Franklin at this point. It's all about what do they want moving forward. I would just caution and say be careful what you wish for, because it could be a lot worse.
Well, and then you also, I mean, every coach is going to lose. Unless, over the last 3 years, there are 4 programs to mention with the fewest losses. Georgia with 1 loss, Michigan with 3, Ohio State with 4, and Alabama with 5 losses. Everybody else has at least 8 losses over the last 3 years. So can you jump up a notch? Well, 2 of the 4 I just mentioned are opponents for you. But the schedule lightens for them. They actually benefit by the new format coming up with the teams coming in. So they're not going to be facing Michigan, Ohio State every year. That helps.
Yeah, well, and look at...
Because the Big Ten, top to bottom, is not good.
No.
Penn State, their offense sucks.
The bottom
but
of the
so
Big
does
Ten,
the conference offense.
The bottom of the Big Ten is horrendous. Jake in the YouTube chat brought up, Tennessee is an example with Penn State. Tennessee fans would kill for 10-2 annually. I don't disagree with that. They would love that.
But can you be Florida State? They were 15-10.
Let me finish, though, because here's what I want to get to the point on that. 10-2 at Tennessee is more of an achievement because the SEC is deeper, and their schedule is typically more difficult, especially when you're playing Alabama, Georgia every year, right? I know they're playing Michigan, Ohio State, but who else outside of that are you playing at Penn State? It's about to get more difficult with USC and Oregon and others coming into the conference if you're Penn State. But look at the residual effect around those programs, those 4 you just brought up, Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia. Look at all of the programs banging their head up against a brick wall, firing coaches that think they can compete with those programs. Florida is churning through coaches. Wisconsin, we're talking about Penn State right now, who hasn't done it yet. Texas A&M.
We have one to get into.
Is one we got to get into. Firing coaches. Why? Because they expect to be elite. They want to be elite, and they can't because those 4 programs are keeping everyone at arm's length.
And they're paid closer than they are on the field to these coaches.
Bingo.
Coming up, Jimbo Fisher out at A&M. What's next?
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those
trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Bold taste of the Southern Legend.
Hot Mike with Henry Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Mike Florio with
what did Mike Florio have to say, Hutton?
With the tweet or post on X. Jim Harbaugh looks forward to playing the role of Tom Cruise in A Few Good Men at Friday's hearing. He goes, Harbaugh should also try his best to avoid playing the role of Jack Nicholson.
Yes. You don't want to be Colonel Nathan Jessup, Jack Nicholson, in that role. I will say also, Harbaugh kind of has the Tom Cruise hair. Like, I feel like they have kind of the same hairstyle. Wow. When I think of Harbaugh back in the day, a little bit of that swoosh up top.
You think he performs his own stunts?
Well, think about Tom Cruise in A Few Good Men with the hairstyle, and then Captain Comeback Jim Harbaugh. There's some similarities, and they kind of have the same hair. Let me ask this in A Few Good Men phrasing for Michigan defenders, or more specifically, Jim Harbaugh defenders in all of this. So, Lieutenant Caffey, Tom Cruise in A Few Good Men, he trips up Jack Nicholson, spoiler alert, in the end, by posing the question, why the two orders? And he said, I'm kind of confused on this. If your word is law and everything you said is immediately your people act on it, why would you feel the need to go back to a subordinate and give them a second order if they follow your instructions without a doubt? So why the two orders? And that, of course, offends Jack Nicholson. And then, chaos ensues with I want the truth and you can't handle the truth. My question for Harbaugh defenders, if Jim Harbaugh is an elite head coach, fully in charge of Michigan's program, and your defense of him is that he had no clue of Connor Stalions, where he was on Saturdays, what he was doing, that he was purchasing tickets to games, that he was the one in charge of getting signs of other teams, that he's talking to your coordinators on the sideline. If your defense is he had no clue what Connor Stalions would do, then how are you considering him an elite coach?
Well,
that sounds like more of a figurehead to me as head coach than someone that's truly in the weeds of the program and has his fingerprints on every facet of Michigan football. So if you're going to defend Jim Harbaugh by claiming that he has no idea what Connor Stalions doing, there's no proof of it, he has no idea, you can't do anything, he is an innocent bystander, I would then pose the second follow-up question by asking you, how elite of a head coach is that to have no idea what someone on staff is doing when they're doing it to this extent?
Well, Chad, you know where I stand on this. I think he absolutely knew.
Yeah.
I think what they're really asking or saying or they're in defense of is prove it. Show me the proof, because you're acting before you've been able to prove anything. We can prove a lot about Connor Stalions. No one's denying that because the proof is there. Imagine any Power 5 program that has the fan base like Michigan does. Alabama, LSU, Tennessee, keep going down the list, right? Georgia, Ohio State. Those fan bases would be doing the same thing. If their conference commissioner jumped in and did this while you're on the flight against an opponent that is capable of winning this year, at least the bandwagon fans are jumping on, and many picked Penn State based on the.
No doubt,
that's the reaction.
I'm not denying that.
It's either that. It's either that,
program would do that.
It's either that, or it's everybody's doing it. But that's the lazy excuse.
Yeah, look, I'm not Michigan's not alone in that after the suspension came down, they fought it. I think most every program would have handled the same way and would have come back hardcore against the conference for doing that.
Yeah.
So I'm not doubting that other programs wouldn't have done that. Now, my answer to that question is when they say prove it, prove it to the Big Ten office, prove that there's a connection here. My response would be the connection is this. He's the head coach. He is ultimately in charge of the program. And everything we have in our bylaws and everything the NCAA is going to tell you is it's his job to know. That's the standard of the NCAA now. It's a failure to monitor at best.
But this is a violation of the sportsmanship policy,
right?
Not failure to monitor.
And it's a violation of the sportsmanship policy by Michigan. And their penalty is to suspend Jim Harbaugh, who's the head of Michigan football. Now, Michigan fans could buy that or not. I'm just telling you that's my response if I'm Tony Petitti. This is a Michigan violation of the policy, so our response is to suspend your head coach. If your response is, well, we're not denying that Connor Staggs did this, but prove that our coach knew, my retort to that would be, our proof is that he's your head coach. So him not knowing is not a defense. He's being penalized because your program did this. You're not disputing it. So we're punishing him as the head coach of the program. Now, Hutton, I'm with you. Every other program would have responded harshly the way Michigan has, and they have every right to defend themselves and do whatever they want. We can get into the logistics of them actually leaving the Big Ten, like has been floated out there, which is the ultimate trump card to play. And, hey, we're down here in Nashville. We're SEC guys at heart. The SEC's raising their hand saying, come on. You want a piece of this TV contract? You'll help ours also. They'd love to have Michigan. Any conference would love to have Michigan. I don't know that that's what's going to happen here. That seems pretty extreme right now for them to bolt and leave the Big Ten.
Well, I agree. But it's the what can you prove? And the other aspect, Chad, to point out is this is the ridiculous aspect of the NCAA. Because the fan base, sure, penalties are coming, whatever. We want to win now. Because the experience, the moment, the banner, whatever, the championship is going to happen this year. The penalties can come, but you experience it now. And we've had the topic in the past. Would you take a championship now knowing that you're not going to have something for however many decades it's been for certain teams, right? Like Georgia fans at the time. You waited 41 years. Would you take it now knowing you have to wait another 41? Everyone would say yes in the moment. And the penalty was, if you look at Kansas and Bill Self, what's the penalty going to be?
Yeah.
A slap on the wrist?
Well,
let the NCAA, let the governing body handle this is the argument, really. Because, we'll take our chances. But the investigation will continue instead of jumping in the way they did. The timing of it, too, with the flight taking off and all that was craziness. But I think the argument is more about, okay, if you're going to suspend him, show us the evidence like Connor Stalions was presented. Because if you can't, then you're punishing Harbaugh for Stalions, but you can't link up the fact that he gave direct information to him. I know it sounds crazy. Again, I believe he knew, but you have to be able to present it in order to punish the guy and discipline the guy based on that.
I think it's a big leap.
Why weren't the OC and DC punished?
I know that because they're not the heads of the program. But
they were direct. You have evidence they're standing right next to the guy.
But this is the big leap here. Coaches all the time stand up there at press conferences, and they defend their guys. They say, ultimately, the buck stops with me. It's my responsibility to get these guys ready. They don't roll on their players often unless you're Shane Beamer. But most of the time, they're in there saying, guys, it is my responsibility to make sure we're coaching properly. It's my responsibility. It's my responsibility to get these guys going. We got to go back to the drawing board. We got to do this, this, and this. I think even the staunchest Michigan supporter has to have sort of a side-eye grin when you are arguing, man, Jim Harbaugh, head of the program, accountable, players coach, this and that. And then you also want to argue, well, there's no proof that Jim Harbaugh knew about it, and now he's just a victim in all this. The head of the Michigan program is suddenly this victim. He is Jesus Christ on the cross. And the NCAA and every other Big Ten team is just out to get him, and he's completely innocent and knew nothing. No. If coaches are going to get up there and say, it's my responsibility, it's my program, it's my team, this is what's going on, they know. So when something like this happens, that is this orchestrated, they're going to know. Coaches get blamed when guys go out and get arrested late at night. That's not their fault when that happens, but they have to stand up there at a press conference, and when they suspend someone or hold them accountable, they too are held accountable. There's going to be columns written about a lack of discipline and bringing in the wrong type of guy and things like that when things go south. This is no different.
Well, but you're right about the criticism. But the penalty, now think about what could happen here. They can win the national title. And the penalty's done. They've served their time, and they're the national champions. So what do you do then? If you wait on the evidence to be presented, you can suspend him more, and you can penalize them more than doing what they did at the time.
Well, they can do both.
Well,
I think they're trying to hit them twice.
But not until they win the title.
Yeah,
is my point.
But this is their way.
You don't render that the way they did.
But this is their way to try to prevent them, to show the Big Ten, to give them their pound of flesh, the other schools, and to say we did something. And if they persevere through that, then fine. It's a national title for the Big Ten.
Will it be viewed as they were punished and now they win? No. That will be the criticism of Petiti, not Harbaugh.
Our resident Michigan man in the chat, Jake, says suspending the head coach isn't even a punishment. When you have a winning culture, it's nothing. Should have taken away scholarships, big fines, recruiting visits, etc. That hurts more. That's coming from the NCAA. That might be a year and a half or 2 years away, but that's probably coming from the NCAA. This is what the Big Ten could do now. I really think the rest of that's going to happen. I don't know it's going to be some huge detriment to the program, but you're going to lose a few scholarships. You're likely to get fined. You're likely to have a limit on recruiting visits or things like that the NCAA can do. It's not going to hamstring the Michigan football program or anything for a long time, but that's likely to happen. This is just what the Big Ten could have done now.
Yeah, and they could do it because there's no appeal. There's no appeal process. But also, who knows how long this process takes for the NCAA. We could have a super conference by then because the new negotiations will be over, and you'll have Amazon, Apple, or Hulu, or Netflix jumping in, and the super conference is here. Speaking of money, wow, with the buyout at College Station for Jimbo Fisher.
$77 million.
Chad, his first coaching job, he made $20,000 that year. First paid coaching job. He was the offensive coordinator at Samford in 91. He will make $26,301 per day over the next 8 years to not coach at Texas A&M. That is insane.
It's insane, and it's the school's fault.
Well, this is the example I would use if I'm a player, if I'm a former player, and I'm an advocate for name, image, likeness, and I'm headed to Capitol Hill, if I'm leading a collective. While it's not the argument to make because it's Texas A&M who's hurting themselves because they've got boatloads of cash. Is there any coincidence they're presenting the fund with, what was it, $160 million or something is what they had at halftime unveiling on Saturday?
A lot.
But I would use this to my argument of, well, if they're going to point to the average of 9% per athletic budget that's going to the players, and if the door remains open to pay players in the transfer portal and where we're headed with name, image, likeness, and God forbid there's going to be an NFLPA version of college football, how about pointing to, well, if you really are cash strapped, it's probably because 42 to 45% of your athletic budget on average for a Power 5 school is going for buyouts. It's going to fired administrators, going to new coaches or coaching search firms, instead of going to what would be revenue sharing for the players themselves. Again, College Station and what's going on there is way different than your average Power 5 athletic budget and what they can handle and the buyouts they can pay. But this would be the example because they have just tripled the second most money paid out to a coach to not be there. And
so crazy.
Tripled it with $77 million. And what is it, $19 million immediately within the first 2 or 3 weeks of this?
Well, it's time we break the cycle of this. And let me give you a possible solution. Not a possible one. This is a solution if you're Texas A&M and how you approach this next hire. Dan Lanning, Lane Kiffin already been thrown out there as names. Dan Lanning and Lane Kiffin to leave their current jobs is going to cost you a boatload and even more in buyouts. You're going to find yourself in the same situation with those coaches if they don't succeed. Go find a coach that you can pay half of what you'd pay them and not give them an enormous buyout for failing, by the way, if you have to fire that coach in 3 or 4 years, and show them the boatloads of cash you're giving players in NIL and say, you're going to succeed here because we have the money and the infrastructure to get you what you need. You're going to have a well-paid staff. You are going to have a lot of NIL, and you're going to win. And when you win, we'll pay you more. We'll pay you more based on achievement. And stop with the massive buyouts that way. They can get a really good coach that way. They're not going to get Dan Lanning or Lane Kiffin without their agents demanding what, Hutton? A gigantic buyout, much like Jimbo Fisher's.
That's right. And you know who knows all about this? Billy Liucci from Texags. We head to College Station next for the very latest.
Dabo Swinney ripping his own fans. Dabo Swinney at Clemson is, I don't know, they tell me that he's the guy that doesn't like the transfer portal because he's made some comments that weren't exactly supportive of it. Dabo Swinney has done a job at Clemson that very few thought could be done. Clemson is a town about this big. Well, I better do this, not that, because that's like a white power sign idiots say. It's about that big. The state is South Carolina. The state is not Clemson. So, but Dabo Swinney put Clemson in rarefied air. If you, a couple years ago, were going to name me the 3 best college football teams before Georgia's run here, you'd say Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson. That's kind of who it always came down to. It felt like. So Dabo Swinney is now the victim of something that is good in one way, but it's bad in another. Incredible expectations of your fan base, meaning 10-2 ain't good enough. It just ain't. You can say whatever you want, but it just ain't. We got to be better. What? We're not in the college football playoff? What? We're not winning a national champion? What? We're 4-2? That's only winning 67% of our games? Here's what Dabo had to say. If you don't go undefeated, people say you're losers, that you're terrible. Let me tell you something. This is why football coaches for years and years and years and years fought the college football playoff. We're at a point in time, and I hate that, where people, if you don't go undefeated, you're losers. You're terrible. It's just a terrible mindset. Honestly, maybe we need to lose a few games and lighten up the bandwagon. Sometimes the bandwagon get a little full. That's the one good thing about going through a little bit of so-called adversity is that you really find out who's with you and who's not. That's all crap. Let me explain to you Dabo Swinney's day, can I? Dabo Swinney probably wakes up around 5:30. Dabo Swinney smokes shit, shower, shave, shampoo, goes to the office. Probably has a meeting at 7. Dabo Swinney then is probably in different meetings with players or recruits or maybe the administration, and maybe watching film, whatever. Then he has practice. Then after practice, he's doing the same thing. Then in the evening, he's making phone calls. Probably goes home around 10. At no point in time in his day, his week, his month, his year, is he finding out who's with us and who's not with us. It's not like there's a list. Now, maybe you find out what media member wants to rip you, but on a daily basis, a monthly basis, you're not finding out any of this crap. It's very simple. Coaches, if you want to know who's with you, understand that when you lose, nobody's really with you. If you want to know who's really with you, win. And then everybody's really with you. It's literally that simple. As my father used to say to me, Dan, we're with you, win or tie, and we ain't so sure about the tie. So shut up with that stuff, win some football games, and don't sweat it. Seriously, do yourself a favor. Work hard, grab yourself a glass of wine, go sit in your chair, and read a book instead of being on social media or worrying about who is with you and who is not with you.
Just like that, second hour is here, Monday edition, Hot Mike with Utney Withrow across the OutKick network. We've been discussing Michigan, Jim Harbaugh, and his comments earlier today, responding after Michigan's big win over Penn State without him on the sideline, serving the first of what will be a 3-game suspension on game days. They're America's team. So he is violating the sportsmanship policy of the Big Ten, Chad. He's suspended for 3 games, and it's all because he was, overseeing Connor Stallions, who was scouting on the road and stealing signs. And now we have Harbaugh, who's stealing the mantra of the Dallas Cowboys, America's team.
It's like the New York Yankees post 9/11. That's the Michigan Wolverines. America just really rooting for them. Everybody's united behind Michigan, who got caught in a cheating scandal.
Hey, I think a lot of people are behind the Yankees, though, in that case. This is
that's sarcasm.
I know. This is convincing. Oh, I thought you were serious. This is convincing the roster, and they're all going to buy into it.
Well, but it's
going to be fun to follow, even if you hate it. It's going to be fun to follow because this is college football at its finest.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's great for Michigan, players, and they can, buy into this lie all that they want. I think it's important for everyone else to point out the absurdity of all of this and what Jim Harbaugh is saying and how Michigan coaches are treating it like a death.
Well,
when they talk about him, goodness gracious.
That was bizarre by Sherrone Moore.
It is all very, very bizarre and over the top. Jim Harbaugh is an emotional guy, always has been that way. The bottom line is no one's stopping them. I said last week, Penn State's got a chance at home to do something about it. They did nothing in that game. Now they're going to beat Maryland regardless. Now it's on Ohio State. Ohio State, if you believe reports and what Michigan thinks about it, they had a big hand in turning them in with evidence. So they tried to stop them that way. Hasn't worked so far. Can they stop them on the field? That's now the big question.
And then the other big news from the weekend, Jimbo Fisher fired as the head coach of the Texas A&M Aggies, and the man who broke the story, we're not surprised.
Not surprised at all.
We're not surprised.
He is the man in Aggie land.
Billy Liucci joins us, the co-founder, co-owner of TexAgs.com. Billy, always great to have you on, man. Thank you for the time today. You've been doing a lot of these. Thanks for finding us time.
Oh, you know it, guys. Anytime. I love doing it with y'all. You know that. So, and y'all are always the first to reciprocate.
No doubt.
I can't even anymore today. I'm surprised I have a voice.
Well, at the very end, I want to get a Metallica story for you that I know I can set you up for. But Chad, let's dive in on this entire process with.
Yeah, I guess let's kind of just shut the door on the Jimbo Fisher era. Billy, when did they know that it was over for Jimbo Fisher? It obviously wasn't just right after a 51-13 win over Mississippi State. When do you think that the door was finally shut for him and his future at A&M?
Obviously, it was Thursday during the Regents meeting. But I think what really got that thing going and rolling, kind of where it picked up unstoppable momentum, let's say, was when they lost in Oxford. Not this Saturday, but the Saturday prior. That 38-35 loss, A&M attempting a game-tying field goal at the end, makeable field goal. One of the Ole Miss guys got a fingertip on it. When that fell short, I think Jimbo's tenure essentially came to an end. It wasn't a sure thing because they did meet to discuss, but had he won that game, fellas, we ain't having this conversation. He's 5-2 in the league right now with a backup QB. Should it come down to that? No. Did it come down to that? We all know that's not true. But I think I was talking with T-Bob this morning, and he said, was it one specific thing or death by 1,000 cuts? Well, fine, that was the 1,000th cut, right?
Yeah.
But that game and losing to Mississippi or Mississippi State for the 5th time in a row, obviously they snapped that Saturday night. Going 0-3 against Lane Kiffin with as much as he was doing this. And also making the point time and time again that A&M was doing less with more. And I think sometimes, that stings when there's a little too much truth to it. And people were fed up. People were fed up, and it was hard if you wanted to go on that side of like, how about one more year because of the contract? Some of those numbers on the other side were just getting a little too insurmountable. They were getting a little too significant to overlook and to kind of try to argue with.
Billy Liucci, our guest, as connected as anyone with the Aggies, and I've said over the weekend, Billy, if you think that they're burning money now in the buyout, and if you know they made the decision last Thursday officially, then made it official to everyone Sunday. But if you know if that if you're burning money either way, which they would have believed, if you know, make the decision now. And where I come down on this, do they know who they want? Like Scott Woodward knew. They had a resume that they were looking for, and Jimbo Fisher was their guy. Bjork, what is the focus of just the comparisons of the two, and maybe the overall description of the coach they want?
Completely different. They do not have a guy. And I don't say that like, I love having a guy and being able to go get him. Having that guy didn't work for A&M. And it's a fun time for me on Twitter because I get to see all these Longhorns tripping over themselves to, they're trying to go old takes exposed. Like that's going to end me somehow. I think it's funny. Like I'd love it.
You are uncancelable, Billy Lucci. They cannot cancel you.
Give me the all the attention that you guys give, and most of them, by the way, are awesome. It's just great back and forth. But the reality is, I said a lot of really good things about Jimbo Fisher, and you know why? I thought it was a hell of a damn hire. The only thing I was, wrong about, and A&M was wrong about, and which is way more important because they spent the money and they've got to figure it. When you extend, there's absolutely no reason to go with the guaranteed money. Because you never know how it's going to go, no matter how good you think it's going at a certain point in time. But hiring him wasn't a bad thing. Paying him what they did when they hired him wasn't a bad thing. Raise extension, not a bad thing. He got A&M closer than they'd ever been. A&M finished top 4, won a New Year's Six Bowl, and they were the following year ranked in the top, I think they were 10 or 11 with 2 games to play the following season. And then kind of the wheels came off. Started with a loss in Oxford, ironically enough. But I don't think, guys, that there is a typecast for this thing. I don't think there's a specific type. I think right now, if you've thrown out names like Lanning and DeBoer and, these guys who are like the most coveted names, young coaches and sport, I think I wouldn't expect them to go that high. I don't think they have any interest in Lane Kiffin. I've heard the opposite this morning on TV and stuff. I don't believe that. You're going to hear the name Dion Kiffin. You're going to hear, Mark Stoops, these guys that are going to cost $8-9 million plus that either haven't done anything really, but you would just be going, oh, imagine what they could do here. I get all that, but I don't think they pick out of that realm. I think they either go sky high, where you're going, somebody just stepped up and said, here's your check. That's the buyout. You guys go from here. Or more likely, I think you see them go with, I hate to use this word because it just sends a message of we've just given up or something. It's not at all the truth, but a more practical, I would say, like, compare it to more of like teams hiring guys on the up, like Oregon's hire of Lanning, like, you look at people like what Florida did with Napier, even though that, that didn't work out. Something along those lines. So you look at guys like Elko at Duke, the former A&M DC. You look at Traylor at UTSA. And I'm not saying there's going to be a wide pool. I could see them hiring a $5 million coach. I could see them hiring a $10 million with a $20 million buyout. I think that's a lot less likely. I think you're going to see Ross. I think Ross Bjork and a couple of the decision makers by nature are more of, hey, it can be done this way. It doesn't have to always be this way. Like Texas actually did with Sark, like A&M did with Kevin Sumlin. You know, there are other ways to do it, and I think that's more likely. But you've got to understand the money that not A&M at this point. I think if it's just A&M, they're going to go, hey, we're not going to go spend a cajillion dollars after spending a bazillion to get rid of Jimbo. But there are a few individuals that might go, why not? Like, if this is the guy that can win a championship, then we're hiring him. And A&M still does have that bullet in the chamber if they need it.
So the way I hear this is that it doesn't seem to be an obvious first call.
No.
Okay, and so there absolutely could be another Brian Kelly version where everyone's like, wow, they just pulled this guy away from this program or the NFL. And you know, I'm bringing up Dan Campbell because that's another link to Texas A&M, who you know very well. You haven't mentioned his name yet. Is he in the mix for the gig?
I think A&M would absolutely reach out just to gauge interest. I don't know if that's the question. They'd gauge interest in someone like Aaron Glenn, his defensive coordinator, who he's going to be an NFL head coach in a year or two. But I think in terms of Dan, he's got something special, as we all know, brewing in Detroit. What they're doing there, that franchise, that city, it's pretty magical. It wouldn't shock you if they went to a Super Bowl this year. I would think about that
Right,
statement.
you're right.
And Dan is the most loyal person that I know. And I said person, like everyone I've met in my life, there's no one more loyal than Dan Campbell. He interviewed for multiple NFL jobs in Detroit and that ownership, and they gave him his shot. He will be I think I could see Dan Campbell being the next coach at Texas A&M. And whether that's, 3 years from now, I don't know. But this one, I've learned in this business to never say never. But that one would fall into the extreme long shot category. I think he could not be happier there. Just like they could not be happier with him.
And Billy, kind of going the opposite.
He's got real perspective too. Sorry, he's got real perspective too of just kind of understanding the situation and how good he has it versus an unknown, even if that's at home. And by the way, I think he would absolutely crush it with no college football experience. That doesn't matter, and it matters so much less now with the NIL portal, salary cap, everything, unlimited, staffers you can add, the whole deal. So
and cash flow there, Chad.
Well, and that's what I want to get into, Billy, is going the opposite direction of Jimbo Fisher. To me, some of that has to do with contract, right, and not having that enormously expensive buyout for a coach that didn't get the job done on the field. And something that A&M has to sell to any coach out there is, hey, we're going to pay you a good salary, but the buyout's not going to be insane. But, oh, by the way, we have all of these resources. We have this NIL program set up. You're going to be able to go out and get top-notch players every single year, and you're going to be able to succeed with those players. Is that going to be a big part of the sales pitch, whether it be to Kalen DeBoer or Jeff Traylor or Mike Elko or whoever the next head coach is?
Yeah, I think absolutely. That's what you're going to see is them go and say, we got a war chest here. But that's why it's also important to make an exciting hire. You got to excite the donors. You got to excite the people they're going to meet and talk about NIL and how important it is to stay at the forefront, but really to move up the pecking order. Hey, we're hiring this new guy. We really can get this thing, started overnight with the right portal guys, with the right money for that, to keep X, Y, and Z player on the roster that we've determined we cannot afford to lose. You better hire a guy that can not only excite those donors and the fans alike, just by his name, his pedigree, or what he's accomplished, even if it's in a smaller place, but he also better have that recruiter's mentality to not only walk in here day one and keep these players on this roster, but also to excite and encourage the people that are deciding how much they want to donate, in terms of resources for the new head coach. Because if a guy can come in here and keep the majority of these players and add a few by way of the portal, you could have a head coach that walks out there next season with no Bama on the roster, no Georgia, and you play Notre Dame, LSU, and Texas at home, and Florida and Auburn on the road, and you're looking at it going, find me a team with more talent than us. By this time next year, depending on who Texas keeps, they might have a more talented starting 22. That is a big might. If A&M keeps everyone and Texas keeps their guys, they walk out there, and I think that game could be a monster Thanksgiving weekend with two of the four most talented teams in the SEC, maybe five. You throw LSU in there, obviously.
Billy Liucci has been our guest. I'm saving the Metallica story for our next visit because it'll be soon with this process.
I got a good one for you, too.
Good.
I got a new one for you guys. It doesn't involve them, but you'll get a real kick out of it.
In 10 seconds here, seriously, is Jimbo retired?
I don't think so.
Oh, the ego. Ego.
Billy, you're the man.
And he's a ball coach, right? Like, that's what they do.
That's right. That's right. And you're the best at what you do.
Thanks so much for doing this, Billy. We know you're busy today,
Get back to Nashville soon, man. Thank you.
Yeah, seriously. We need to do that.
Don't wait on the Metallica concert in Nashville either. Just come for no reason at all other than to hang out with us. Thank you, Billy.
See y'all.
Billy Liucci, Alpha. We give our alphas and betas of the weekend next, right here on Hot Mic with Honey Withrow.
Quote, a good state champion caliber high school boys team would smoke the best team in the WNBA. Then this weekend, after the video was posted and the critics, of course, came for him, he doubled down on what he said, posting this on X. Quote, it's sexist to say women's basketball players aren't as good as men's. That was a question, obviously. It's my opinion, and I'm putting $1 million behind it. If I'm wrong, the WNBA team can take my money and make more from one game than they do for the entire season. Okay, so let's get into this because obviously there's a lot of people out there who are just assuming that Clay is being sexist, that he is trying to really punk the WNBA because let's be honest, the ratings for the WNBA aren't great, which is exactly why Clay made the joke at the end of that. If you were to give them $1 million for losing the bet, that would be more than the WNBA would make regularly for one game under normal circumstances. But the fact remains that men and women biologically super different, and that's what he's talking about. We even look at a boys' high school basketball team and the makeup of their players, what they're able to do, their size, their skills, and look at the WNBA players who are oftentimes much older. They're professional basketball players, but still, the level of competition would not at all be on the same playing field. So, Chris, let's get into that. What is your take on this? The fact that people would say that, Clay, you're being sexist, when reality remains men and women, super different, even at very different ages, different places in their careers, there would be no matchup whatsoever.
I don't even think it's questionable. I love that Clay took it to him. I think a lot of times silence speaks louder than words. The Las Vegas Aces haven't said anything in response yet. Mm-hmm. So, look, you're right. I dug into the rosters, the Las Vegas Aces, and then, look, I've spent some time training at IMG Academy. I work with athletes at a school called Lou High, which is one of the top programs in the country. And we have guards 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". We're on the Aces. The tallest players are 6'3" and 6'4", and those are their bigs. So they don't even have anybody to really account for the bigs on the male teams. And I don't know that it's how in any way is this a sexist thing to say. Yeah.
Well, I have a woman, I think, who will be able to help answer this question. She is super smart. She's super intelligent. I am a big fan of her. Everybody, you're also a big fan of her. We all are. It just has to be said. So let's go ahead and bring in the woman of the hour, Riley Gaines. Hello, Riley. I'm happy to see you again. I feel like I get to spend so much time with you these days.
I know, right? Very good to see you, and I will say it is rainy here as well, which just sucks.
Okay, so are you, I know the last time we talked, you were like bouncing all over the place. Where are you right now?
I'm actually in Nashville, but headed to New York today. So I'll be on deck.
Okay, well, welcome. You get to go from rain to rain.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So Riley, let's get into the topic that we were just discussing. Obviously, Clay being a little bit sarcastic in the way that he framed the question, but he's saying he's willing to make a bet that the WNBA champions, still being the champions, professional basketball players, would not be able to hold a candle to any high school boys basketball team in the country. Is he being sexist, or is he just speaking facts that men and women are very different in terms of what they are capable of athletically?
Boom. Right there. It's not sexist to say men and women are different. It, like you said, it's reality, it's truth, it's common sense, it's logic, it's reasoning. We all know it.
Sixth and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. How's the chat today on YouTube?
Fiery. People are they like to argue about
Warriors?
Jim Harbaugh and
Keyboard Warriors,
Michigan.
or
yeah. No one's come after me yet. Just give it time. Someone's going to fire me up. Someone's going to say something that makes me mad. It'll happen.
Coming up, we've
But
got
I love everyone in there so far.
alphas and betas of the weekend, and plenty to choose from this weekend across college football and the NFL. And Chad, it's time to step up your game, and not yours if you've already done this, but if you're out there and you haven't done the alpha move with Manscaped, Chad's got you covered here.
You know, Hutton, I've always been searching for a way to spice up my Thanksgiving. I don't know about you. If
Same.
you're out there
Same.
and you're ready to spice up your Thanksgiving,
Yep.
you know, you're getting ready to dive headfirst into a mountain of mashed potatoes and gravy and cranberry sauce and all that. It's time to talk about the unsung hero of the holiday season, the Manscaped Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. That's right. It's time to go cold turkey on your old razor and go with the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. Visit manscaped.com and use code HOTMIC for 20% off and free shipping, and enjoy Thanksgiving in style with the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code HOTMIC at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use the code HOTMIC, all one word, HOTMIC, for the spelling impaired out there. Be thankful this holiday season for the best gift of all from Manscaped. And Hutton, your balls will thank you.
They will.
They will. Just know that.
And that you can all thank Chad Withrow as well.
And spice up your Thanksgiving.
20% off with the code what?
Hot Mic.
Hot Mic.
HOTMIC. Spice up your Thanksgiving. I've always said Thanksgiving needs to be spicier. This is how you do it.
Chad, on Friday, I mentioned that going into the season this year, or on Thursday, rather, you were here Thursday, that Josh Heupel, if you said, hey, circle one game that you've got to have, just personally, it would be the South Carolina game.
Yep.
From the year prior. And I compared it to Eli Drinkwitz.
Some similar vibes in this game.
I think so. Missouri handles Tennessee, and it was a coaching landslide in this game. Eli Drinkwitz over Josh Heupel, which is the biggest development to me so far of what I've seen from the Tennessee team, but maybe even Missouri. Missouri has really stepped up, and they've done so much better than what I expected on a competitive nature. And on Saturday against the Vols, it was a no-brainer which sideline won the game, and it was the home team for the Tigers. And that would be the game that I think Drinkwitz would have circled, which would be Tennessee and Heupel.
Yeah, we'll get to the Heupel side of this when we get into our betas of the weekend. But Eli Drinkwitz, hats off to him.
Yeah.
He was an alpha this weekend. Tennessee tacked on a late touchdown, and that was still when they're having to impress College Football Playoff Committee voters before they lost to South Carolina that following week last year. And they put up a bonus touchdown to put up 66 points on them. Tennessee under Josh Heupel had scored 62 on the road in Columbia and 66 at home against Missouri. And then in year 3, they scored 7 The previous low for a Josh Heupel coach team was 13 a year ago against national champion Georgia on the road. 7 points in this game. Drinkwitz was terrific. He loves to talk, and he gets his chance to talk now, and he is talking that talk. He said post-game with CBS, our defense kicked their ass today is what happened. And he's not wrong. Cody Schrader was unstoppable in this game, running and catching the ball out of the backfield.
Just fun watching him.
Was terrific for Missouri. He's a transfer from Division II Truman State. Tennessee had no answer. It was sticking with the Drinkwitz part of this. This is a guy who's not had a winning season at Missouri. They are in line to go 10-2 now. It is very much a real possibility with Florida and Arkansas to close out the season. Missouri is the Tennessee of 2023. Tennessee with the surprise 11-2 season a year ago. Missouri's got a chance at the surprise 11-2 season and a New Year's Six bowl game win this year. That's a really good football team.
Yeah.
They acquitted themselves well against Georgia. They did so a year ago also against Georgia. They seem to play them better than almost anyone else in the SEC. And I was very impressed. Tennessee had no answers for Brady Cook, running or throwing also. He was a big factor on third down. Hats off to Eli Drinkwitz, who I thought was on the hot seat coming into the season. And he has eliminated doubters with an amazing season for that Missouri program.
And I'm glad you mentioned the comparison to the Vols and not the Gamecocks.
Yeah.
Because I've heard a lot of that. Missouri is this year's version of South Carolina. No, they're not. Because
they're better.
They have been consistent from week one. Like just the whole vibe with that program is they're showing up and they're winning. And we saw that South Carolina, to their credit, they won those games at the end against Tennessee and Clemson. This is different. This has a different vibe to it. And Saturday again, I don't know if Drinkwitz has received the credit of what we've seen at Missouri. It's been a lot of Brady Cook. And that's I agree with that. But I also agree that Drinkwitz was great.
No, he's
Saturday
been great.
night.
And look, this year, Tennessee a year ago had the Alabama moment, right, where they ended that streak and Alabama was a favorite.
And that moment was last week.
Yeah, and this was sort of their – Tennessee is not Alabama, but this was kind of their Alabama moment. But
Or could have been Georgia.
Tennessee. Could have been Georgia. They lose at home to LSU also, and I think 49-39 game. A year ago, Tennessee had that win at LSU in a blowout. Then they had the Alabama moment. So 11-2 can look a little bit different, but 11-2 at Missouri with an SEC schedule, that's damn impressive. So we can make jokes about Eli talking too much over the years and all of that and not having a winning season. They got a winning season this year, and that's a really good football team. And I don't see a lot of signs of big drop-off next year for them. So he's got it rolling a bit right now at Missouri. And I think this year they clearly are ahead of South Carolina, Kentucky. You put Tennessee on the board there too. They get Florida this week. They're second-best team in the SEC East in the final year of the conference. It's been a while since Missouri has had a team like that. So Eli Drinkwitz, one of our alphas of the week.
Alpha as well. Joshua Dobbs, for the second consecutive week, shows up and shows out. 312 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. And while he had just joined the Vikings yesterday, he didn't even know how to get to the locker room. And again, just rolls with that offense. And he's soon to have the healthiest version of Justin Jefferson back.
Can't wait to ask Armando Salguero again if they're still dead. Every week I said, hey, when they beat the Saints, I'm coming back. Are they still dead with Josh Dobbs at quarterback? Josh Dobbs is the first player in NFL history, 400 yards passing and over 100 yards rushing and 0 interceptions in their first 2 games with the team. That's period. That's with an entire offseason to prepare. That's a rookie quarterback. That's a traded quarterback in the offseason. This dude had no time to prepare. Being traded midseason. His 5th team, different team, 6 different stop over the course of 1 calendar year. And he's there in Minnesota. He's making plays. He's got some swagger about him. He's showing off the running ability. He had a beautiful touchdown pass to T.J. Hawkinson. Also, a nice touch pass over the middle. He's got a good rapport with Hawkinson. They throw to each other in Nashville in the offseason. So Hawkinson's actually caught a lot of footballs from Josh Dobbs before. This is a story that's not over yet. I keep expecting Josh Dobbs to return to the mean a bit. Not happened yet, though, Hutton. That's a big win for them over a decent New Orleans
Well,
Saints
I
team.
mentioned of the stretch of their, because I mentioned Vikings are still in the mix for the playoffs a couple weeks ago. It was because of their schedule. And their one remaining team of the next 5 weeks, I was saying then, not now, was New Orleans at the time of the winning record. It could have changed now. I have to go back and look. Chad, the other thing, Kevin O'Connell, because you mentioned not having time to prepare. Josh Dobbs didn't have time to prepare when he joined the Titans. Didn't have time to prepare all that much with a new system in Arizona when he was traded from Cleveland. Those coaches didn't get this out of him.
No.
And that deserves props for O'Connell. And speaking of coaches, another alpha, D'Amico Ryans. And a back-to-back game-winning drives for C.J. Stroud. And he's in the MVP conversation with a first-time head coach in year number 1. D'Amico Ryans is getting it done in Houston for a franchise that hasn't been – they've been rudderless. They have not had – the leadership from the top down, talking from owner down, in years. And D'Amico Ryans comes in as the option for them over Sean Payton. And he's done and worked wonders with this group.
There's always a surprise team in the NFL. That's a surprise, top 10, maybe top 5 team that going into the season you just didn't see it happening. That is the Houston Texans this year. They're thinking about winning the division now. Yeah. They're very much in play. Already stomped Jacksonville once. They're very much in play to win the AFC South. I'm blown away by Ryans and his control of this team, by some of the interesting things they're doing offensively with C.J. Stroud, and Bobby Slowick as their offensive coordinator has been outstanding in year 1. You mentioned the term rudderless. Great way to describe the Texans. That's no longer the case. D'Amico Ryans, you, sir, are an alpha, and you were showing it right out of the gates with this Houston Texans team. Terrific command of that locker room right now. He has them believing. C.J. Stroud looks like he is a stud franchise quarterback. He's not just the offensive rookie of the year. He's in the MVP race right now.
Yeah, it's a
with the way
room.
He's playing for the Texans.
Yeah, he deserves it.
That's how good he's been. Incredible story with the Texans. They are really, really good. We could give a lot of alphas out on that team. C.J. Stroud's one of them. But we're going with D'Amico Ryans today. And great point on Kevin O'Connell and what he's been able to do with Josh Dobbs in Minnesota. He's doing a terrific job.
And Stroud with 8 pass completions of 20 or more yards yesterday against Cincinnati. He had 9 of those against Tampa Bay. Josh Heupel leads our betas of the weekend, going with field goals. What was the score? He was down, 36-7?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Who is this guy?
I like
what
Josh,
happened in this game?
I like Josh Heupel, and I like what he has done. And Josh Heupel was a victim of going for it too much in Tuscaloosa. And he usually has that mindset of, we're scoring. Very calm about it, but let's go. If it's 4th and 2 or less, they're going, and they're trying to score touchdowns every time down. I think Eli Drinkwitz beat him senseless in this game. I don't know what was going on, but when you trot the field goal unit out with seconds left in the game on 4th down, 36-7, Eli Drinkwitz with some gamesmanship rightfully called timeout to ice the kicker, which is pretty funny on the last kick, and Tennessee misses the kick with a kicker who's been good all year. Josh Heupel, that is a beta move, my man.
Yes.
That's not going to win you any fans in doing that. A year ago, you could say it was either beta or alpha, depending on your outlook, to tack on that last touchdown and go over 60 for a second straight year against Eli Drink. This was the opposite of that, just trying to get to double digits, I guess, with a late field goal down 36-7. Go for it. Throw into the end zone. Do something. Hand it off and run it and try to get the first down or the touchdown. Do something other than that. This was a top-down dreadful performance for Tennessee. Their punter was their MVP on this day. It is one that you can't just erase from the board and forget about immediately. You got to digest it. You got to wear it a little bit. I think Josh Heupel and that staff will wear it, and they're not going to go out of their way to talk bad about it. They're going to own it, and I think they did post-game. But you got to wear this one and move forward. But that was awful, and that was a beta move at the end of that game. No way around it.
Chad and I, we discussed a bit about going into the week against their matchup against Georgia this weekend. We'll give you our thoughts on that a bit later in the week because you're right. It deserves a mention now.
I think the mindset
Saturday
will be different. I don't know what the final score is going to be, but I think they're going to play differently in that game.
Chad, Michigan doesn't play different. They just show up and show out.
They maul you.
And Sherrone Moore mauling to bawling post game against Penn State, crying and sobbing and thanking the Lord, and then dropping F-bombs. Jim Harbaugh, I love you, bleep.
Kenny Powers and Eli Gemstone rolled up into one with Sherrone Moore post game. First off, I want to thank the Lord, and I bleep and love you, Jim Harbaugh.
I mean, look, I like emotion in sports, but this was just like what the reason behind it is bizarre, because if it's been so difficult, they're not showing it. They're not showing that after previous games where they're going through all this investigation and all the behind the scenes turmoil with the program. I mean, and they've coached with them before this year.
This is where we have all these moments in sports where, like, someone has a bad injury. I'm watching Virginia-Louisville Thursday night, and the kid that, is not moving his extremities after a bad hit. And you see the emotion of players in the field and that moment of perspective from coaches, from people calling the game, everything else. You're in a tight back and forth game, but people are applauding. When the kid's up on the stretcher or gives a thumbs up, that's where perspective sinks in on life versus sports, right? This is an appalling lack of perspective from Sherrone Moore. He is acting like Jim Harbaugh's in the hospital when he's giving this post-game remark. He's acting like there was a death on the team. Jim Harbaugh got suspended by his own conference in this deal. Let's keep perspective on this for a cheating ring that you're not denying happened. Beta by Sherrone Moore post-game with these tears and that weird interview.
Well, suspended by his own conference in week 11, suspended by his own university weeks 1 through 3, and self-imposed suspension.
Final beta, Mac Jones. Enough said.
Yeah, he is broken.
He's done.
That's my quarterback.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing. And we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of the Southern Legend.
Sixth and Peabody, our location, Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine resides right here. Massive property in Music City, right downtown.
A full city block, this property.
Yep. If you're ever in town, right behind the
I haven't
convention
seen
center
properties like
and,
this. It's
and the
amazing.
arena.
I need to get one of those hats. They have an amazing collection of hats here at Old Smoky.
Chad, very random here.
That was very random, by the way. We go from one random thing to
get you
another.
a hat? I'll get you a hat.
Yeah. Can you pick one out for me?
You want me to pick you out? Yeah,
Yes.
Sure. I'll do that.
Next break, Hutton is going to pick me out a hat.
I will.
We're going to put it on this table. And then by the end of the show, I'll be wearing it.
I will get you something that I would wear because that's what we normally do.
So I take
we wear the same things practically.
I take my daughters to school most mornings early, and I'm not getting up and showering at the hour I take them. So I'm putting on like a sweatshirt and wearing short, and I put a ball cap on to walk because I have to walk my youngest into school. And I keep thinking, I need one of those nice Old Smoky or Yeehaw caps.
Okay.
To just
put
in my truck. Everyone knows, well-renowned truck guy over here. Put that cap in my truck. Keep it there.
Man.
Don't think about it. I've got a nice spot for it on the dash. Put that cap there and wear it into school every day. Hutton's going to pick one out for me. I can't wait.
Davey can join in this conversation too. How many games would Missouri win in the Big Ten this year?
Big Ten West or East?
We can put that in there. I think they would beat Penn State.
Missouri in the Big Ten West is just easily the champion of that division this year. Wouldn't you say, Davey?
Yeah. I was
Iowa's their biggest competition.
I was just trying to think
no
of
offense.
Teams with a decent offense in the Big Ten, and really there's only 4 that come to mind. So, and 3 of those are really, actually, I would say all 4 of those are more so in the Big Ten East. So, yeah, they would easily win the West, in my opinion.
Yeah, it would depend on their kind of crossover opponents, right? In the East, they'd have to at least draw one win, and they couldn't get Michigan and Ohio State at the same time.
I'm bringing this up just to make the argument, I'm preparing the argument for everyone that wants to. Michigan and Ohio State could both be in the playoff this year.
Yeah,
and we're saying, well, it depends on the schedule of Missouri. Think about their schedule and what we've been discussing with Michigan. Again, they're great. But if we're going to start to look behind Florida State right now, and we get more of the results coming up tomorrow, I'm curious what the sentiment begins to become with Alabama, Washington, others. Kyler Murray returned. Played pretty well.
Yeah, I was impressed.
Yeah, and man, I told, I don't remember, I think it was Davey last week, I thought that Arizona was going to win the game against Atlanta. And they did. I mean, and I didn't think Murray was going to be that good, though. And that mobile, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And he was Kyler Murray in a good way.
It's also impressive when you think that Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 also dropped on
right?
Friday.
Yeah.
So
he's playing that today.
You've piqued my interest with this Missouri and the Big Ten.
Yep.
The Big Ten West deal.
Yep.
I just pulled up Nebraska's schedule.
Oh, okay.
Okay. You guys tell me. what Missouri's doing with this schedule. This is a Big Ten West schedule.
They're winning because we know that. Hey, we know the schedule they have right now.
Yeah,
and they're winning.
At Minnesota,
win.
Michigan at home,
Loss.
At Illinois,
win.
Northwestern at home,
easy win.
Purdue at home,
easy win.
At Michigan State,
easy win.
Maryland at home,
win.
It's a win.
At Wisconsin,
win. They're terrible right now.
Iowa at home. Iowa currently 22nd in the country. Iowa at home.
Hit the under too.
So, I mean, I'm looking at the schedule that their non-conference would feature a game at Colorado early, which would have been tough.
They're hosting a college football playoff game.
Yeah, they're 11-1. I mean, they're going to be 10-2, I think, with this schedule.
No, I'm saying they're hosting a game next year.
Oh, they're 11-1 with an outside chance. I mean, they're playing Ohio State or Michigan in the Big Ten championship for a spot in the playoff.
Yep. Isn't that crazy?
The Big Ten West is so damn bad.
It's atrocious.
It is so. It is,
and that's the tiebreaker for Penn State, correct?
It is a crime to think this is if it's the Big Two, guys, SEC and Big Ten, and one of the divisions of the Big Two is this horrifically bad. It is a crime.
When you say this makes me think the Big Ten can't get two teams in if Michigan or Ohio State loses.
Well, it depends how the game. It's not if you lose, it's how you lose. And where is Ohio State tomorrow? And if they lose to Michigan, what's the score? How does it come about?
Yeah.
And then how far do they drop? There's going to be craziness and a ton of debate this year. And I think the conference title games mean much more. But I think there will be one team who's sitting right there that isn't playing on Conference Championship Saturday, and they can make a case. And the case would be made against whoever you're competing against, Michigan or Ohio State, and the loser of that game, based on the schedule.
I just want to go quickly back to just how bad the Big Ten West is. Hutton, I think you take it a step further. I think if you gave Tennessee, Kentucky, or Florida Nebraska's schedule, they might win the Big Ten West. I think Tennessee would. I think Kentucky could. I think Florida might.
So
I think all of those teams might just lose to Michigan if they had that schedule.
I believe
that's how bad that is. That's not a big compliment to those other programs. That's how bad the Big Ten West is.
Had Penn State split, and all of Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan were all 11-1. They would have the tiebreaker to go to the Big Ten championship game because of their record against the West opponents. Didn't we hear that from someone earlier this year? And that would have been, and I believe that's Bobby Carpenter, that would have been, again, inflated based on what we know now of the Big Ten West.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about how bad it's been.
It's time for That's My Quarterback.
It's my quarterback.
Let's hear them, David.
All right,
I was
guys.
about to say, where'd the sunglasses go? Oh, there they are, magically appearing.
It's incredible. It was a historic day in the NFL when you look at game-winning field goals. We had a record 5 games end with a game-winning field goal. And so leads me to my first question. In getting that W, which game-winning drive, which quarterback had the best performance?
I think it's Deshaun Watson. I think it's because of the opponent. I did not see a breakout performance from Watson coming against that Ravens defense on the road. The way he played in that game. He had 2 big, long drives late in that game. And scoring more than 30 points against that defense and coming through in the clutch, that's a $230 million guaranteed quarterback. That's the Deshaun Watson the Browns signed to that record deal of guaranteed money. He was great.
In the second half.
I was most impressed with him of all the game-winning drives yesterday.
Chad, I like the answer because at one point, and it may be the final, he was 16 of 16 in the second half. He was awful in the first half. And he turned it around and ends up having the game-winning drive. I'm going with C.J. Stroud, though, because in back-to-back weeks, we have now seen, with limited time, and he had far more options this past Sunday than he did the week ago against Tampa, where he had 46 seconds. It took him 40. Does it again, back-to-back weeks, game-winning drives offensively. And his stat line is incredible, 356 passing yards yesterday. He's got a touchdown pass. He ran for another. And when you consider where the Texans were, not even, 10 months ago now, they were right there where they won a game and they actually hurt themselves. They lost to Chicago. They could have had the number 1 pick again in the draft this past year. And they would have ended up with Bryce Young. They end up with C.J. Stroud. And the game-winning drive here, and the reason I put him number 1 over Watson, we're talking about Stroud again this week, and he's in the MVP conversation, not just Rookie of the Year conversation. That game-winning drive does more than just give the Texans a win. It puts them a game behind the Jags because the Jags got boat raced by San Francisco, and he does it again against Cincinnati, who is also on the ropes, needing to keep pace in what is an incredible division of the AFC North. Baltimore and Cincy lose. Pittsburgh gets a massive victory against Green Bay, and Cleveland with a big drive as well. But I think it's the drive of Stroud, because Stroud's going to end up putting the Texans right there in the mix to win a division his rookie season, and no one saw this coming.
Yeah, I'd also say for Stroud that the Texans having that win over the Bengals, I think will actually loom very large whenever we get to the seeding of the playoffs.
Hey, Geno Smith, let's just mention Geno and how quickly they move the football too, just to throw him in the mix. He's a third option for me in answering this, but
DK Metcalf was big on that drive.
Yes.
All right, guys. Well, for our next one, send some help. This is a quarterback that you think would be successful if he had better weapons/skill players around him.
Chad, I'll start this real quick. My answer is Joshua Dobbs. Justin Jefferson, he's getting that guy back. And keep in mind, they're going to address more of the run game this offseason. And we're finally seeing Joshua Dobbs with help around him. Skill position and help. Skill position, he's getting the best receiver in football back. And he's got the coach. I can't wait to see if he can sustain this level of success, consistency. Because all the movement, how many teams now? 7? His 7th roster?
6 different stops in the last year, 5 different teams. He was with the Browns 2 different times over the last year. 7 teams total, I think, in his career.
Yes, and what he's done in the last 12 months.
Because you're adding Pittsburgh and Jacksonville other than the last year.
That's right, yeah. I mean, I want to see him have a chance. And in Minnesota, they have the thoroughbreds on offense, where if he's just consistent and protects it, he'll be okay.
I'm going to go I have no real evidence in the NFL to prove this point, but I still think Bryce Young is going to be a really good NFL quarterback. I saw it at Alabama. That supporting cast is terrible. Adam Thielen is his best pass catcher right now, and this is not vintage Adam Thielen. He's getting with the Panthers. I think he's going to be better when they get better players around him.
And keep in mind, too, like everyone's saying, oh, they made the wrong pick. Trevor Lawrence was outplayed by Mac Jones his rookie season.
Yeah.
You know, that you have time. You don't have much time, and it's not ideal to have to switch coaches after a rookie year, but you do get the benefit of the doubt in your rookie season, because most of the time you're not going into a great situation. And Bryce Young's not there. We didn't think C.J. Stroud was initially because they were changing coaches too, but now he's paired up with a young coach and a young coordinator. Meanwhile, Bryce Young is with Frank Reich, and who knows what happens there.
I saw a graphic before this weekend. It was touchdowns that Bryce Young's thrown the most to, or players that he's thrown the most touchdowns to. And there were 4 guys on the list, and I think Adam Thielen had 3. But then with 2, you had DJ Chark and Kenny Moore. Kenny Moore is a defensive back for the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, that's tough.
So it's been rough for him as far as looking at that, their surrounding cast. Guys, and then moving on, talking about the skill players, the weapons around you, but what about the offensive line? So someone please block. This quarterback just desperately needs no line in order to be successful.
I think it's any quarterback playing for the Tennessee Titans, whether that be Will Levis or Ryan Tannehill. It's probably going to be Ryan Tannehill again when Will Levis inevitably gets injured behind this line. Vita Vea, who's a very good player, beats Andre Dillard, in record time. You could have done like a basketball screen in front of someone and bought more time for a quarterback with no hands used than what he did in this game yesterday. That offensive line is one of the worst groups that I've ever seen here in Nashville with this Titans team, and awful for whoever's playing quarterback behind him. So, Hutton, give me any Titans quarterback for someone who could desperately use better line play.
Yeah, Vita Vea, that would have been a charge in basketball, what we saw.
Yeah.
called for a charge.
And a poor charge taken, too. Probably would have called a block on him also.
To me, this is pretty easy considering the numbers here. The Titans quarterbacks have been sacked 33 times. Sam Howell has been sacked 47 times. If Washington can have any semblance of an offensive line, he led a great drive to take the lead in Seattle yesterday. 40 sacks through 7 games, and now up to 47 through 9. Good luck with any quarterback that's behind that front right now with the Commanders.
Do you think the Commanders stick with Hal for next year?
I think he's shown he can be the guy, yeah. The
question is, does Bill Belichick want him? Because he's going to be the next Commanders coach.
He struggled with picking his quarterbacks post-Tom Brady.
He may trade for Bailey Zappi based on what we saw yesterday.
Yeah. Or you know what, Davey? I trade him and go. It depends where they're drafting, but they're winning enough to where it's like kind of what they did last year. They surprised people, and they're kind of around 500, even though you can't go 500 now. But didn't they tie last year? Was that someone else? That was Indy, I believe, who tied.
Oh, the old tie. We love a good tie.
Plenty of quarterback questions in the NFL. We've got headlines next with the Patriots.
Dabo Swinney ripping his own fans. Dabo Swinney at Clemson is, I don't know, they tell me that he's the guy that doesn't like the transfer portal because he's made some comments that weren't exactly supportive of it. Dabo Swinney has done a job at Clemson that very few thought could be done. Clemson is a town about this big. Well, I better do this, not that, because that's like a white power sign idiots say. It's about that big. The state is South Carolina. The state is not Clemson. But Dabo Swinney put Clemson in rarefied air. If you, a couple years ago, were going to name me the 3 best college football teams before Georgia's run here, you'd say Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson. That's kind of who it always came down to. It felt like. So Dabo Swinney is now the victim of something that is good in one way, but it's bad in another. Incredible expectations of your fan base, meaning 10-2 ain't good enough. It just ain't. You can say whatever you want, but it just ain't. We got to be better. What? We're not in the college football playoff? What? We're not winning a national champion? What? We're 4-2? That's only winning 67% of our games? Here's what Dabo had to say. If you don't go undefeated, people say you're losers, that you're terrible. Let me tell you something. This is why football coaches for years and years and years and years fought the college football playoff. We're at a point in time, and I hate that, where people, if you don't go undefeated, you're losers. You're terrible. It's just a terrible mindset. Honestly, maybe we need to lose a few games and lighten up the bandwagon. Sometimes the bandwagon get a little full. That's the one good thing about going through a little bit of so-called adversity, is that you really find out who's with you and who's not. That's all crap. Let me explain to you Dabo Swinney's day, can I? Dabo Swinney probably wakes up around 5:30. Dabo Swinney smokes shit, shower, shave, shampoo, goes to the office. Probably has a meeting at 7. Dabo Swinney then is probably in different meetings with players or recruits, or maybe the administration, going and maybe watching film, whatever. Then he has practice. Then after practice, he's doing the same thing. Then in the evening, he's making phone calls. Probably goes home around 10. At no point in time in his day, his week, his month, his year, is he finding out who's with us and who's not with us. It's not like there's a list. Now, maybe you find out what media member wants to rip you, but on a daily basis, a monthly basis, you're not finding out any of this crap. It's very simple. Coaches, if you want to know who's with you, understand that when you lose, nobody's really with you. If you want to know who's really with you, win. And then everybody's really with you. It's literally that simple. As my father used to say to me, Dan, we're with you, win or tie, and we ain't so sure about the tie. So shut up with that stuff, win some football games, and don't sweat it. Seriously, do yourself a favor. Work hard, grab yourself a glass of wine, go sit in your chair, and read a book instead of being on social media or worrying about who is with you and who is not with you.
Just like that, the final hour of the Monday edition. Hot Mike with Ed and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. You can join us, YouTube, streaming live at OutKick.com as well. Search out OutKick on YouTube. You can hit that subscribe button. Chad is in the chat. Join us there. Chad, great to have you back out on Friday. And
yeah, it's good to be back.
Yeah, back in the chat. I know I peeked in and saw that there were complaints that you weren't in there. They said, so
Friday?
Chad, yeah, they did. So Chad's not going to be available to chat today.
Well, first off, let me apologize to everyone that's in the chat of my
They did say
absence
this.
on Friday, but I'm happy to be back in the chat today. We're going back and forth. It's been, I think, a positive chat. We're always producing things, getting to a conclusion. It's been a great time.
David Pollack will join us coming up later this hour.
Hutton, I requested a hat.
I've got you.
That I wanted from Old Smoky or Yeehaw. Hutton has chosen a hat for me that he will now bequeath to me on air.
Yes,
legally.
It is your royal right. You can have either one there. I figured you would like the gray with the green, or that's the Old Smoky hat or the Yeehaw hat here, which is white.
I'm a fan of the gray Old Smoky.
There you go. So I'll take the Yeehaw white.
Look at that.
There you go. Yeehaw and Old Smoky. 6th and Peabody, our location.
I'm not
Yeehaw
a flat
beer
bill guy like our
Old
guy
Smoky
Colin over
moonshine.
here, so I'm going to have to get this thing worked out a little bit, then I'll wear it.
Davey, are you upset? You can thumbs up, thumbs down on not getting the hat. You can have this one. This one matches you, by the way. There you go. He's upset, yeah.
He's mad.
We
don't allow Davey to speak outside of his own segments.
How upset?
You will speak when spoken to.
How upset?
You let the boy watch.
Is
Davey's only allowed to watch. Look at this movement.
Chad, how upset is Robert Kraft at Bill Belichick?
I mean,
look, this has been going on for a while beneath the surface. And then you had the rumors creep into he's got to win in Germany. It's an important game against the Colts. I mean, both teams were awful. But they come back from the Europe trip, losing for the first time there as a franchise with Belichick as the head coach. And, well, now they go into the bye week. And I'm not buying into and we've seen crazier things happen. I'm not buying into you fire Bill Belichick now when you could potentially trade him in his contract. But you do if you're certainly just so angry behind the scenes. And that's really what it comes down to. The details of we don't know how this relationship has deteriorated, because it has. And it's been doing that since Brady bolted. And that was the whole saga there. Brady wasn't great. The offense wasn't great. Belichick and Brady had something going on there. We knew the split could happen. Kraft tried to keep it together. He had that last-minute meeting with him. And if I want to say Belichick wasn't there for that.
Was it Ben Volin that had the report that if things don't go well in Germany, maybe?
Yeah.
Something like, and really needs things to go well in Germany.
Harold, he's the same reporter that had the two sources around the Patriots organization that it is without a doubt that Vrabel is the home run hire to replace Belichick if, in fact, that's going to happen.
Well, I think Robert Kraft is upset with Bill Belichick. Amazing instant GIF of Bill Belichick in the toboggan hat, and he was having what looked like a migraine coming on with that last interception where it's just in slow-mo and he's putting his hands on his temple and kind of rubbing the side of his head as his eyes close in frustration late in that game. Mac Jones is decidedly not the guy in New England. He has proven that time and time again, and proved it again in this game on an awful interception where he's fading away, throwing off one foot for no reason. There's no pressure around him, and he lobs it right to a Colts player. It was a horrible play. I think this is going to be the end for Bill Belichick. You don't fire Bill Belichick mid-season. I mean, that's Look, it's a cutthroat business, all that. This guy won you multiple Super Bowls and is a legendary coach in New England.
Yeah.
You don't fire that guy because you're mad about a trip to Frankfurt, Germany, and a loss and the way things have gone. So he's going to make it to the end of the season. Hutton, you mentioned possibly trading him. I think the wheels are coming off a little bit in New England, and Mac Jones is not their guy. They got to go find a quarterback. It's not Bailey Zappi either.
Well, they're going to be in position to get one.
Yeah, they're going to
They're
draft
among the worst teams right now in the NFL. Right now, they would have a top 5 pick, and they could potentially end up with a top 3 pick, but it was all said and done. They also have the second most cap space of any team next year, other than the Tennessee Titans. So they can rebuild, and they're going to have to. The question is Belichick there to do that?
He shouldn't be.
Or if Kraft is going to bring in his own general manager and then hire the head coach. He did comment, by the way, to Rich Eisen, and said this prior to the game in Germany. Quote, I'm talking about Robert Kraft. It's our 30th year that I've had the privilege of owning this team, and I've never been 2-7. So it's really disappointing. I had hoped that things would be a lot better, as I know our fan base did. And I hope today is a chance to reset and make this a much better year. This isn't what we were expecting to happen this year. That from Kraft. It's the first we've heard from him.
Yeah, and
other than the Hall of Fame induction for Vrabel and company, and also from Brady earlier this year for the Patriots.
I don't think the current setup can continue where Bill Belichick has total control as GM and coach. Now, in a scenario where you force the hand a bit and hire a GM that's going to be in charge of personnel, and Bill Belichick's agreeable to that and all those things, I don't know that's going to be the case, then maybe you give him a chance to lead this next version of the team. But it's going to be a next version of the team because they're going to be drafting quarterback in the first round. They're moving on from Mac Jones. He's not the answer. And I don't know that sticking with Bill Belichick in this next era is the right decision for Kraft. And I feel like he knows that. I also think you pay the guy enough respect that you don't fire him midseason. He completes the season. Then you make your decision.
I totally
agree.
You
allow him to get this team to improve, to see what Bailey Zappi or Mac Jones has the rest of the way, whatever it is. You allow him that opportunity and don't do anything midseason. I hope they don't.
From Ari Mirov, Chad, at the 33rd team?
Not Dove Kleiman.
Not Dove Kleiman.
I get the two confused.
Tom Brady lost 66 games over his 20 years in New England. So how many have they lost since 2019 when he left? Since he left? 33 times. So half as many games as Brady lost in 20 years as the Patriots QB.
And that's a testament to Tom Brady. I mean, the longer this goes, it's more and more just fitting tributes to Tom Brady.
It is.
And his time there. I am convinced that all of that Patriot way and that culture, it was some Bill Belichick, no doubt. It was being able to tolerate his personality and him being a great defensive mind and all of that. But a lot of it was the tolerance of that personality and the way that locker room operated. There was a judge, jury, and executioner, and his name was Tom Brady. And not Bill Belichick at times. They followed Brady. I think Mike Vrabel, the head coach of the Titans, would probably tell you that also. And he had a big part in that culture while he was there. A lot of guys in that team did. But it was
a lot of people.
It was a self-police type situation. And Belichick, certainly, I'm not trying to undermine his role with that, but it's more Tom Brady than Bill Belichick, everything that went on. It's pretty easy to say that now.
Talent evaluators, well, they miss a lot. But when you hit big. And when you miss on a level where you need a player and he's long gone, it sticks around a bit. I thought trading away Joshua Dobbs would come back to bite Cleveland. Hasn't been the case. They win yesterday and a comeback victory over Baltimore. But what Dobbs has done, Chad, is crazy. Where he signs off the practice squad from Detroit in Nashville late last year, and since then, goes to Cleveland, signs with them again. He's back with the Browns. Then he's traded right before the regular season starts. Then after the recent loss for him as the Cardinals starter, he's told that, well, he's going to be the guy. And they're going to stick with Dobbs. That's what they told him. And then all of a sudden news comes out that, well, Murray could be back. If not, we're going on the road against the Browns. Maybe we may consider a different quarterback. And then it was announced, 24 hours later, Dobbs is the backup. Kyler Murray can start, and if not him, it'll be Clayton Tune. And then he's traded at deadline. And then he goes and wins, and then wins again. And did I think he was going to go on the road and win in Atlanta? It's possible, because they were going up against an Atlanta team that had just benched their starter. Did I think he was going to back it up again? No, not to this level, and not against the Saints defense. And he did. And now, at 5-4, it's on the table for Minnesota with their upcoming schedule.
Is he staying in an extended stay suites right now? I'm guessing. I doubt he's even got a condo. He's probably sleeping in a hotel still in Minnesota.
Maybe he does today.
It's been such a whirlwind. Someone's gonna have to set that up for him because he's working each day and then just basically going somewhere to sleep at night.
Chad, upcoming schedule: Broncos, Bears, Raiders, Bengals. Broncos, Bears, Raiders. Next 3 for Minnesota this year.
It's one of the more incredible stories, not just this year, but in recent NFL memory. When you think about it, how difficult it is. 6-4 now, by the way.
Oh, thank you,
Minnesota. So I was double checking on that. I thought they went 2 games ahead of 500. 6-4, manageable schedule moving forward. It wasn't a 1-game fluke. He got it done, and he got it done in crunch time against the Falcons, and he comes back to have really an even better game against the Saints, and this one a more complete game, passing the ball as well. Remarkable story. Clearly well-liked by his team, and it's one thing to be well-liked and a good guy in the locker room. It's another thing to be a guy that guys rely on, that they look to for leadership. They say, oh, this guy can go win games for us. He's showing that. Showed it against the Falcons. Got a good connection with T.J. Hawkinson. Getting a good connection going with Jordan Addison. Justin Jefferson should be back at some point also. Keep that in mind.
I think it could be this week.
Crazy stat. The Vikings are 5-0 without Justin Jefferson and 1-4 with him so far this year. They are undefeated without Justin Jefferson playing.
That's crazy.
He's probably the best receiver, if it's him or A.J. Brown right now, one of the best receivers in the NFL.
Won 13 last year with him.
Yeah. But they've gotten the job done without him this year.
Now, what does Dobbs do with him? That's the next step.
Yeah. I think he's going to be better. I don't think there's any reason to think that he's going to be worse once he gets Justin Jefferson back.
Yeah, but again, what are they capable of? Anything. Because the Lions get a nice win yesterday, but the Vikings are keeping pace. And I believe we've got a matchup with them coming up, Vikings and Lions. Yeah, Christmas Eve. Lions at Vikings. Followed by Vikings-Packers to end the season for Minnesota. Yeah, you're right. It's the best story, and they're winning their 5th straight game doing so.
He is so much fun. The Kyler Murray scramble yesterday was awesome to watch, where he runs about 70 yards to pick up that first down on the final drive. Watching Josh Dobbs run as a quarterback is the closest thing to me is what it was like watching Steve Young take off, because both those guys break tackles like a running back. You don't see many quarterbacks that are breaking arm tackles. That's Josh Dobbs. He has a running back mentality when he takes off and runs. He had another spins out of a sack, goes right a little bit, breaks left, and has a long run in yesterday's game for a touchdown that left Kevin O'Connell kind of shrugging his shoulders, like the dude in the Bulls documentary after he wins in quarters against Michael Jordan. He's awesome to watch. I've always loved watching the guy going back to college, but I don't think the rushing ability is going to be there forever. I think teams are going to catch up to that in the NFL and shut some of that off. But when you can break a sack and break contain, there's no stopping that play. And Dobbs has been able to do it now a few times since he started playing with the Vikings.
I'm just seeing this on social. So Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football, has offered to help the Texas A&M coaching search.
It's good to know.
I have faith in A&M leadership to put somebody in place to get us where we need to be. Pieces for success are in the building. However, I can help in any capacity. I would love nothing more. Johnny Football.
I'm trying to think of who he would know. Like, who could they send in? Like,
everyone.
If Johnny Football is the closer.
No telling, dude.
But I'm saying if you're A&M and you need his help, like he's the closer. But who would he be the closer with? So, hey, before you leave and go back to Oregon, Dan Lanning, we got someone here that's about to walk in the room that would like to talk to you. In walks Johnny Football, and he seals the deal.
Yeah, but Kingsbury was his quarterback coach, right?
Yeah.
His Heisman year. Kingsbury's
the one that can get it done. They want to bring Kevin Sumlin back. He can make that happen, too. You guys want to go back to my coach?
I'm eager to see who the number one name is for them.
Well, it's one thing. Okay, two routes here, right? And one of them does not lead to financial responsibility, which I think we need to return to in college football because buyouts for coaches is way out of hand right now. If you want to go bigger than when you hired Jimbo Fisher with a better resume, contact Urban Meyer and see if he's willing to come back to college football.
That's the only way to do it. He's the only guy.
That's the only guy with a better pre-existing resume with a national championship, multiple ones at different schools on his resume that you could go after and try to get. I don't think they go that route. We had Billy Liucci on. He said it's going to be more of a mid-level coach and not some of the biggest names on the list.
Because they don't have Strickland. Strickland's hiring recently.
I also firmly believe you get the right guy in that mid-level with their resources, it's going to turn into a home run if you don't go that Jimbo Fisher, Urban Meyer, big name, big fish route.
So that Strickland's past hires, even now at LSU, Kim Mulkey, Brian Kelly, Jimbo Fisher, there's a trend there.
Yeah.
I don't think
Woodward.
Woodward, sorry, not Strickland. I don't think they're following that path. It doesn't sound like with what Liucci told us. However, he did continue to hint like there's that one guy. Sounds like what they're really thinking. You pay the buyout donor. Hey, guy, please pay the buyout for the current coach who's coaching somewhere else. We'll fund the salary.
I don't think that's the route they should go now. I think this is a job where you go find a really good coach that really wants that job. And you give them all the NIL funds you have right now, and they will generate some excitement with players they can bring in.
What we do know, though, is while the money may go down, money goes up for every other coach that's mentioned with this entire process.
Yep.
Harbaugh says Michigan is America's team. That's next.
Quote, a good state champion caliber high school boys team would smoke the best team in the WNBA. Then this weekend, after the video was posted and the critics, of course, came for him, he doubled down on what he said, posting this on X. Quote, it's sexist to say women's basketball players aren't as good as men's. That was a question, obviously. It's my opinion, and I'm putting $1 million behind it. If I'm wrong, the WNBA team can take my money and make more from one game than they do for the entire season. Okay, so let's get into this because obviously there's a lot of people out there who are just assuming that Clay is being sexist, that he is trying to really punk the WNBA because let's be honest, the ratings for the WNBA aren't great, which is exactly why Clay made the joke at the end of that. If you were to give them $1 million for losing the bet, that would be more than the WNBA would make regularly for one game under normal circumstances. But the fact remains that men and women biologically super different, and that's what he's talking about. We even look at a boys' high school basketball team and the makeup of their players, what they're able to do, their size, their skills, and look at the WNBA players who are oftentimes much older. They're professional basketball players, but still, the level of competition would not at all be on the same playing field. So, Chris, let's get into that. What is your take on this? The fact that people would say that, Clay, you're being sexist, when reality remains men and women, super different, even at very different ages, different places in their careers, there would be no matchup whatsoever.
I don't even think it's questionable. I love that Clay took it to him. I think a lot of times silence speaks louder than words. The Las Vegas Aces haven't said anything in response yet. Mm-hmm. So, look, you're right. I dug into the rosters, the Las Vegas Aces, and then, look, I've spent some time training at IMG Academy. I work with athletes at a school called Lou High, which is one of the top programs in the country. And we have guards 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". We're on the Aces. The tallest players are 6'3" and 6'4", and those are their bigs. So they don't even have anybody to really account for the bigs on the male teams. And I don't know that it's how in any way is this a sexist
question
thing to say. Yeah.
Well, I have a woman, I think, who will be able to help answer this question. She is super smart. She's super intelligent. I am a big fan of her. Everybody, you're also a big fan of her. We all are. It just has to be said. So let's go ahead and bring in the woman of the hour, Riley Gaines. Hello, Riley. I'm happy to see you again. I feel like I get to spend so much time with you these days.
I know, right? Very good to see you, and I will say it is rainy here as well, which just sucks.
Okay, so are you, I know the last time we talked, you were like bouncing all over the place. Where are you right now?
I'm actually in Nashville, but headed to New York today. So I'll be on deck.
Okay, well, welcome. You get to go from rain to rain.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, Riley, let's get into the topic that we were just discussing. Obviously, Clay being a little bit sarcastic in the way that he framed the question, but he's saying he's willing to make a bet that the WNBA champions, still being the champions, professional basketball players, would not be able to hold a candle to any high school boys basketball team in the country. Is he being sexist, or is he just speaking facts that men and women are very different in terms of what they are capable of athletically?
Boom. Right there. It's not sexist to say men and women are different. It, like you said, it's reality, it's truth, it's common sense, it's logic, it's reasoning. We all know it.
Chad, coming up, David Pollack will join us, the Family Goals podcast host and the Pollack Family Foundation.
Longtime ESPN College Game Day host.
Yes. Yeah, but great guy. Joins us again coming up. It's in about 20 minutes. Megan Rapinoe injured in her final game. And postgame says, I'm not a religious person or anything. If there was a God, like, this is proof that there isn't. This is effed up, just effed up. 6 minutes in, and I eat my Achilles. And I'm thinking, well, she may think that that's proof that there isn't a God. I would say there's proof that there is, based on this. She'd be the most unlikable person that comes through the headlines on not a daily basis, but way too often.
I
would like to ignore her.
I find it to be an odd disposition to be passionately atheist, to try to like sell that there is no God.
Yeah.
You know, if I was a religious person and believed in God, that this would be proof that there is. I'm like, if you believe in nothing, how can you be passionate about it?
Right.
People that are passionate about wanting to convince someone that God doesn't exist always baffles me, because I'm thinking, how can you passionately believe in nothing and want to sell that point to everyone? By the way, the opposite of this person is David Pollack, who will be joining us in about 15 minutes.
And 6 minutes in.
I am, look, I'm thankful's not the right word. Congratulations to Megan Rapinoe, who's done a lot internationally in the game of soccer for the United States of America.
Great player.
In her career. I am very happy that we're probably not going to hear as much from her moving forward. I say that, Hutton, knowing that she is going to probably produce more quotes now that she is retired from soccer, and we will probably be reacting to it on OutKick and everywhere else for years to come. That's probably going to be the case. So, unfortunately, we're still going to hear from Megan Rapinoe, especially after dumb comments like that.
Well, let's hear from Jim Harbaugh, shall we? Here is the Michigan head coach who was not on the sideline.
A Michigan man.
The Michigan man, Jim Harbaugh, suspended for 3 games, the first being this past Saturday against Penn State. Doesn't matter. They took care of Penn State. Michigan, running how many times in the second half? 32 times in the second half, 36? It's in the 30s. 20 consecutive runs, I know that one. And, well, here's the reaction from Harbaugh about his team and their performance.
The perseverance, and then the stalwartness of these guys. I mean, watching, I would have to say, everybody. It's got to be America's team. It's got to be America's team. America loves a team that beats the odds, beats the adversity, overcomes what the naysayers and critics, so-called experts think. That's my favorite kind of team. And watching it from that view on the television, it was finally people get to see what I see every day, in these players and these coaches.
So earlier I said, to me, he's trolling. He's motivating his players, just like Kirby Smart did. It doesn't make sense. Kirby Smart convinced his team last year.
We were picked to lose every game this year.
No one thought that they were going to win. He thought that, and their team was just convinced that no one believed in them, which was just it was crazy. America's team, they are not. Ann Arbor's team, yes. And everyone in Ann Arbor will make them feel like America's team. And Harbaugh's going to play into that. And I think he's really trolling Tony Petitti because consider the way they played against Penn State. And Penn State's not that good. We went through the West schedule. They're way overhyped.
They're okay.
Okay, but compared to where they're hyped in their 2 matchups this year.
Correct. Not elite.
They got Maryland coming up, Michigan does, and then Ohio State, who they have been, sorry, Ryan Day, more physical than each of the last 2 years, especially. Lou Holtz can say that, and you can get pissed at him. I think this is a troll job, and we're going to continue to hear it unless there is some, justice, gridiron justice, where one of these teams catches fire and does everyone a favor and hands them a loss. Because unless Ohio State or Maryland take care of business, Chad, Michigan's going to take the Big Ten trophy from the hands of Tony Petitti and declare themselves America's team. And the suspension will be over, the punishment done, and they'll go on to the college football playoff. And at that point, all of this, we thought this would end with an injunction. And it still could.
It's going to on Friday.
I know Clay said he doesn't believe it will, just because they didn't do it last week. But if it does or if it doesn't, this whole thing ends up with Michigan still right where they were going to be. And instead of just going about their business and clipping teams the way they were, now they're just more or less pissed off for greatness at the fact that everyone hates them, and they're going to play the heel in the WWE storyline of thanks for loving us.
Well, first off, let me say Michigan's very good. Yeah. I can still see a scenario where they get housed by Georgia or Alabama in a college football playoff game, but when they go head-to-head with them. So for those that are rooting against Michigan, which is I hate to break this to Jim Harbaugh, who believes they are America's team. Yeah. Most of America is rooting like hell against the Michigan Wolverines right now because of this scandal that's taking place. And yes, he is correct that Americans love stories of overcoming adversity. They love the guy who gets knocked down and gets back up off the mat and goes on and does great things, right? When it's self-inflicted adversity that we're talking about here, with Connor Stallions dressed in Central Michigan coaching gear on a sideline photograph being stupid, with spy goggles on, looking at the opposing signs, America doesn't really get behind those stories of overcoming adversity the way Jim Harbaugh would like for you to believe. So maybe it's trolling. Maybe he's just shockingly not self-aware. I think it's probably he shockingly lacks self-awareness and lives in a Michigan bubble where his own president, Santa Ono, is acting like I don't even want to use too extreme an example that could get me in trouble right now, but is acting like the most persecuted humans on earth, and how this is just going to make the Michigan community stronger on social media with things that he's posting. I think the whole thing is ridiculous. There's a way to go about this, and here's the post from Sant'Ono. I mean, I'm reading this as it's written, and just listen to how dramatic this sounds.
He will also announce Harbaugh's extension the same way.
You would think that every member of the University of Michigan Athletic Department got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer at the same moment, the way this sounds, okay? This is from Sant'Ono. Countless members of the University of Michigan family have reached out to me over the weekend, and I wanted to express my appreciation. Like any community, we face our share of challenges and adversity. There have been many such moments in our history, but as our team showed so clearly yesterday, we will respond to any challenge head on with a conviction to do better and to emerge even stronger. Go Blue. That from the president of the university. This is so ridiculous, it feels like it's not real when you start to read some of these quotes. I'm sure this plays well in the Michigan locker room. And I think there's a way. I don't want to parse too many words. You know, we do words for a living on this show. So we say a lot of words every day. We don't get every word right. There are things that we could go back and play on this show and say, I wish I would have phrased it this way, or I wish I would have done it this way. So I don't want to be too much in the business of parsing words. But instead of Jim Harbaugh telling America that this is America's team and that Americans love a story of overcoming adversity, and you got to love what you saw on Saturday and you love this group, I think you could say it in a way that people could understand. That we have very much rallied together through everything going on, and we are insulated, and we feel more together than ever. And I think that people can watch that and find an appreciation in it for the way we're going to play, the way we played on Saturday, and the way we're going to play moving forward. I wouldn't have had a big issue if he said something like that, because he's not wrong. You can find an appreciation for that. And if you want to go out and say, hey, our players knew not, I know they can't comment on an ongoing NCAA investigation, but go ahead and say publicly, our players don't know what's going on with any of this. We know the coaches do because we've seen the coordinators talking to Connor Stallions during games, but maybe the players didn't know. I buy that. I don't buy that you didn't know Jim Harbaugh, but I could buy the players weren't told that Connor Stallions was illegally getting these signals. There are ways to phrase it that could have sounded better. This just sounded so over the top. And everything coming out of Michigan sounds so dramatic and emotional that it's gotten old pretty quickly.
David Pollack, formerly of College Game Day, will join us coming up in about 10 minutes. We heard from Desmond Howard on Game Day last week and again this week on Big Noon Kickoff. Another Michigan man.
Michigan man.
Charles Woodson had this to say.
As a Michigan man right now, are you upset?
Well, I just listened at all of the implications, and it seems like none of the implications implicated Harbaugh. It only tells you about Connor Stallions and what he did. And I don't know if he was a rogue agent, if he was out there doing this all on his own. I, in my humble opinion, do not believe that Harbaugh knew what this young man was doing. Now, was there somebody on the staff that Stallions was talking to that knew and was maybe taking some of these signs? I don't know that. And I can't say it for certainty. And the NCAA didn't say it for certainty. And Tony Petitti didn't say it with certainty. So nobody can say that Harbaugh knew. They can only say that, okay, this guy was in the stands, like you got all these signs with people saying you got the glasses and this guy in the stands doing videotapes with his iPhone. There's going to be 100,000 people in the stadiums today with iPhones, right? Anybody can have an iPhone. Anybody can videotape signs. So listen, am I mad? I'm only mad because I think the whole thing is okay, right? That's why I'm mad. But other than that, we're going to be fine.
Okay. So two things we've learned there. Number one, Woodson agrees that with us, you can't really connect anything with hard evidence. We haven't heard that from Petitti, that here's why you're suspended, other than you're the figurehead of why we're suspending someone. We've also confirmed not America's team, Michigan, based on the comments there at a Big Noon Kickoff, and you hear the boos in the background.
Yeah, that was the first of a few FCC violations committed by Michigan men on that day on a Fox broadcast. So
That's right.
I'm sure that you quickly move on when a guy starts cursing on live television like that. But I would love for one person to follow up with Charles Woodson and ask the question, what does that say about Jim Harbaugh as a head coach of the Michigan Wolverines if you claim he had no idea about anything Connor Stallions was doing? Someone please ask a Michigan man that question next time that's brought up. What does that say that a guy he hired, that he previously met with, that had this entire system orchestrated, if you were claiming he had no clue whatsoever, does that undermine him as a head coach? What does that say about him as a head coach if that is in fact true? I'd love to hear that answer from Charles Woodson.
Sticking with him. I'm surprised.
And I love, by the way, that I can start to hear it. I can start to hear that hint of sarcasm when people use the phrase Michigan man. Now, a Michigan man, Charles Woodson, it'll be sarcasm from here on out because Michigan men don't exist. They're college football fans, like everyone else, like the rest of us. They're no better. They're not morally pure. They don't have better integrity. None of that is real. They're nothing. They're nothing like anything that they proclaim they are. They are college football fans that want to win like everyone else.
Bo Nix right now is the Heisman favorite, odds-on favorite to win the trophy after he's got plus 185 after Oregon beat USC, and you've got the Knicks, who ends up going 22-7 was the lead, and then so you've got several contenders. Is this how it's going to end up? I think it's going to end up being Michael Penix Jr.
Yeah, I know David Pollack we're about to have on. He's listed his favorites. He's got Jaden Daniels, I think, number one on his
Daniels
list.
right now is third, where you can bet 10 to win 58.
Yeah, which, I mean, they're not going to have the best team, but he's having a terrific year. Bo Nix makes sense. I still like Michael Penix Jr. for the award, but
I do too.
He's as good as anyone else.
Every time we mention this, though, I'm going to mention Marvin Harrison Jr. because if, in fact, everyone's against Michigan, the last statement to be made will be Marvin Harrison Jr. in Ohio State, and he could single-handedly help win that game.
Yeah, I don't think J.J. McCarthy has a chance for the reason that people aren't going to vote for someone on Michigan
right
with
now,
all
he's
this going
plus
on.
10,000.
Yeah.
That's really the penalty, is he's not going to be included.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it hurts him.
I don't think he's going to have a chance at it. Bo Nix makes sense. I do think there's a little bit of the Devontae Smith year.
Yeah.
When there's not a clear-cut quarterback to be the winner, that is the year that a non-quarterback can slip in there and win it.
You know, and that's what happened in Smith's year, where you have the split vote, and then, well, I guess it's got to give it to the best skilled position player, which was him that year.
I think that you're right, and that if it's Marvin Harrison Jr. going crazy, and beating Michigan, that's whatever happens that game is going to help or hurt him, because that's going to be the most watched college football game of the entire season.
Chad, coming up, David Pollack will join us. We'll get his take on what's gone on with the Michigan Wolverines and across college football. Plus, talk about his awesome foundation, the Pollack Family Foundation. That's coming up with the big banquet that they have soon. That's next on Hot Mic.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only one or two. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Bold taste of a Southern legend.
Glad you're with us. Hot Mike with Hutton Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Pleased to be joined by David Pollack, college football analyst, of course, a Bulldog, as well as a Bengal. And now he's with the Family Goals podcast. He is the host of the Family Goals podcast. And he's got a banquet of blessings that's coming up with the Pollack Family Foundation. And he's nice enough to join us right now. David, good to see you, man. Hope things are well.
Oh, dudes. Great to have me on. Thank you, guys.
Well, tell us about the banquet that's coming up.
We got a banquet November 20th. Our foundation's putting it on, and we're busting in the needy in the area of Athens, about 1,000 of them, and they're going to come in, and we literally got tables everywhere, the nicest china you can get, and we're going to serve them. We're going to serve them a meal, and a lot of them obviously are homeless. A lot of them don't have a lot, and we're going to serve them, try to love on them, and then we're going to go over to the table, and they're going to have a brand new jacket, a brand new backpack, a brand new sleeping bag, a coat. It's just going to show them, man, that they matter and try to pour some love into them. And it's going to be an awesome event. It's called the Banquet of Blessings. And it's going to be a lot of us that have a lot to be able to give to people that are in a little bit of crisis or a little bit of need.
I love this. And, the giving season should be year-round, but, of course, at Thanksgiving, you can head to PollackFamilyFoundation.com to get involved there. Just check out the Banquet of Blessings. Man, Georgia has found their stride, right? I mean, beat down this past weekend of Ole Miss, and we saw that turn midway through the season. What do you make of the Bulldogs and where they're headed versus where they were at the beginning of the season, where we thought, well, Georgia and Bama just not the caliber we're used to, but they're right there back in Atlanta.
Well, I think Kirby's loved it, right? Like not being
No doubt.
talked about as number one, them being talked about their deficiencies. Listen, their defense has serious question marks. And watching early in the season, you saw them. And I think they needed to improve. You see them. They're starting to improve. They got the best 1-2 punch in the country at safety. When you look at Starks and Bullard, they make plays all over the field. They can tackle. They can cover. But I think what you see up front is the pass rush really, really coming along, starting to come alive, which makes this back end even better. But starting to get experience. But here's the thing, dude. Carson Beck started the season without their running back, Dejon Edwards and McConkey. Then Bowers got hurt. You saw this past week, dude, when you get all of them on the field, like McConkey's probably a second-round pick at receiver. Bowers is obviously a super freak. I don't know what kind of body he's got, but it ain't human. He's Captain America, for God's sakes. And so you get him on the field with Dejon Edwards at running back, and you can tell the offensive line, that their right tackle, who's a first-round pick, and Marius Mims comes back. So I think Georgia's starting to get healthy now. Dude, and what they showed last week, they proved to me that they're the best team in the country.
David, we have a mutual friend, a buddy of mine I grew up with, played ball with my whole life growing up, Josh Clark. says hello.
Oh,
Says
yeah.
you guys worked out today. And I said, what should I ask David? And he said, ask about what his foundation is doing for Thanksgiving. I'm like, well, we already took care of that with the first question. And he's very impressed with that also. So he wanted to tell you hello as well.
Well, Yasha, appreciate that. That's my dude.
So Michigan, you don't have your old colleague Desmond Howard here to talk to him about this, but you got Jim Harbaugh saying, hey, we're America's team now. People should rally around us. I don't think that's the case with most college football fans out there. What was your initial reaction, David, to the story when you heard about Connor Stallions? And where do you think about where this has gone with the Big Ten's response?
America's team is not a cheater. I don't think that ever goes hand in hand. I don't think that's the case. I do think, like, you could tell in the post game and Michigan versus us, like with the beanies and all the emotion you could see. Like, Michigan's going to take this to heart and they're going to use it as motivation, which is good. But here's the thing: all you need to do is look at the coaches' responses in the Big Ten. How adamant were they that they should be punished? Like, listen, sign stealing has been going on forever, right? Like, but there's a big difference between me looking to the sideline and seeing this and going, oh, when they do this, it's power. And me videotaping your signals. And, like, listen, this is very similar to Spygate, right, with the NFL. There's no doubt about it. Like, this was dirty stuff. They deserve to be punished. And I don't get on the train of, well, Harbaugh didn't know anything, because that's what's been let out by Michigan, right? Harbaugh didn't know anything. That's your job. Your job as a coach is to run the team and run the ship. And if people are doing stuff without you knowing, you're not doing a good job. Everybody should come to you. Everybody should answer to you. So I don't believe that for a second. Michigan's still a great football team, and they're having a great season. But obviously this was disturbing, and it ticked off everybody at the Big Ten because everybody was on board with punishing them.
Are you good with the suspension of Harbaugh as the punishment, or do you think it should be something else? Something that happens later, something more severe when you look at this season? And you nailed it. Clearly, all 13 other Big Ten teams had no issue with this, and that's why they acted when they did.
Well, it's kind of like Spygate, right? Like, we didn't know all the details. The NFL burned the tapes. Like, they wouldn't let us see it. Like, what do we really know? Like, how much more evidence can you give us? Because there's a lot more that's being let out about what lengths they went to cheating. And, listen, here's the thing. It's a competitive advantage. Whether you want to admit it or not, it's a competitive advantage. When I know what you're running and I know how to call a defense or call an offense off of that, it really, really matters. And yeah, they went and beat Penn State and it was good. But I think that if it's going to be something like this and we find out more details about it, then I would take something away from the players and their opportunity to compete in the postseason. But I think this will be the thing to appease everybody, appease the Big Ten, but not go too far out of the realm and really tick anybody off. I think, and listen, if this was the NCAA's decision, not a dang thing would be done.
That's right.
They suck. They suck at everything. I mean, there's nothing that they do well or enforce in college football. They really don't have a place. It's amazing how they keep making money off the sport.
Jimbo Fisher's bank account does not suck. He's getting paid $77 million to fail at Texas A&M as the head coach, to walk away now. What do you think about that move for A&M and what they should do next with all of that NIL money and money they have with boosters at that school? What direction should they head in next? What should their mindset be for the next hire?
Well, first of all, I want to get fired. I want to get fired from A&M. Like, it's a good life. It's a good retirement package for, like, the whole lineage of Jimbo Fisher family, for gosh sakes. I mean, how awesome is that he gets paid that much money? Listen, number one importance, the next guy. Listen, whatever you hire next is always the opposite, right? So Jimbo, very dictatorship, very in your face. They need somebody that can build this. It's not talent, guys. Like, you watch this roster and you see all the 5 stars and you see all the talent. It's evident and it's everywhere. But you've got to have somebody that can build chemistry, that can make everybody play together. Everybody wants to point to 5 stars this, 5 stars that. This is a perfect example of they have all the 5 stars, but if you don't know how to teamwork and gel and bring them together, it really doesn't matter. And it's been a colossal mistake, and it's been bad at A&M. But you know what? The good thing you said is right. They've got the money. They've got the facilities. They've got more money to continue to spend because they are absolutely hungry to win. So they need to find a great culture guy, a guy that can build team, a guy that's not about himself. And it will be very interesting. I've already heard Deion Sanders' name thrown out there because they got a lot of money and the juice he was able to create in Colorado. So interested to watch A&M in their next move.
David Pollack, our guest on Hot Bite with Hunt and Withrow here on the OutKick Network. David, top 4 for you right now, the first 2 out even for the college football playoff updated rankings. I'm sure you're going to say Georgia's going to leap Ohio State. I don't disagree with that at all based on what we've seen. How does it stack up, though?
I got Georgia 1 now. I did not have them 1 last week. I got FSU, too. I still think FSU, when they're healthy at wide receiver, having those big playmakers, I still think Jordan Travis is a flipping problem. And when you look on the other side of the ball for FSU, they got some dudes that can rush the passer. So when I start comparing FSU to Washington, I think there's like a lot more guys that can get after the quarterback and make it hard. I got Ohio State next. Listen, I like Ohio State last week. I like more play action. They're going to be a run-based team. They tried to be their normal selves to start the season. That's not who they are. Like, they're not good enough at the quarterback spot now with McCord to drop back and throw the ball a ton. Like, they're going to have to live on the running game. We haven't seen them play great offenses at all. So I'm interested to see if that defense is completely rebuilt or not. Then you got to go Washington. I think Washington's the next team. Penix Jr. can spin it, bro. Like, it's going to be interesting to watch them. They can't stop anybody, though. Like, and week after week, I'm still watching them. Now, listen, they've had moments in the fourth quarter and the second half when they've gotten enough stops to win football games. But if you can rush the passer and you can play a little bit of defense against them, I question their defense. Next, I'm going to go Michigan, and then I'm going to go Oregon for the first 2 out. But listen, Michigan, I think, is a really good football team. We worry about who they play. They finally play Penn State. Interesting to me that they run the ball 39 times, like straight in the second half. Don't throw a pass technically. Like, does that say something about your quarterback in a big game? Does that say something about your coaching now moving forward in a big game? But I tell you what, the winner in the rushing attack, Ohio State versus Michigan, has won like the last 15 plus years. So if you can run the football, obviously they can still beat Ohio State. And the Ohio State-Michigan will take care of itself regardless.
Where do you have Bama? And if hypothetical here, if Bama goes through and beats Georgia, the number 1 team for the SEC title, does Bama get in and the SEC would have 2 at that point because Georgia's not going to fall out?
Well, I mean, I think it would matter how the Ohio State and Michigan thing goes down because they're also going to be 1 loss. Bama's loss obviously was a pretty bad one at home. Where does Texas wind up, by the way? Does Texas run the table, win the Big 12? Because if it's between Bama and Texas, we got to give that to Texas, correct? Like, so I think it's going to be interesting. I think Bama, obviously we know they have to win. They have to beat Georgia to get in. But you got Georgia. If Washington can stay undefeated, and then Georgia could be that team because I think Florida State's going to stay undefeated in the ACC. And so now you're fighting for a couple of spots between teams that might possibly have to play each other. But the Ohio State or the Alabama versus Texas game that we already got to see, there is no ifs, ands, or buts. Committee did this, committee did that. They played. Texas spent their hiney. Like, if it comes down to that, don't give me any. They've gotten better. They've improved this stuff. The field, the product on the field, and what happened better, Kevin.
PollackFamilyFoundation.com is where you can go for the latest on the Banquet of Blessings, which is coming up, and you can get involved. It's fantastic. Awesome. Check out the Family Goals podcast as well with David Pollack, who's been our guest. Always great to catch up with you, man. Thank you for the perspective and great work with you and the family and what you're doing with all the benefits around the Thanksgiving time.
Thank you, dude. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Good to see you. David Pollack there. Chad, do you think he would relay the message that the Vols, they're not just going to crater on Saturday?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he's feeling pretty good about it. As a Georgia guy, he can give us a thumbs up or thumbs down. I think he's feeling pretty good about Georgia on Saturday. But
I would be
big
too.
Thumbs up. Tennessee has been a different team at Neyland.
Yes, they have.
Than they have on the road. I think
what's the streak?
They'll respond by playing a better game they did against Missouri. I don't think it's going to matter for the win-loss column.
How many straight wins at home?
I think Tennessee's won 13 or 14.
Wow.
Georgia's won 27 straight now overall. And then their winning streak is up to 27.
Yeah. One loss in the last 3 years.
My buddy Josh Clark is sending me things to ask him, and he said, ask him about the Dove Creek Middle School girls basketball team. Extremely dominant. So apparently there's a tie in there. I'm guessing with one of his kids. David does a lot of good work. I know
Yes, he
throughout
does.
the Athens, greater Athens area community with coaching teams, and we heard about his work with the Pollack Family Foundation. Really cool stuff with David Pollack. And how about that? He outright said, cheaters can't be America's team. Hate to break that to Jim Harbaugh. Pretty strong on his thoughts on everything that went on with Jim Harbaugh.
They can win the
Michigan.
title, though, Chad. Cheaters can win the title. NCAA will let you. You can win the title.
It would have been entertaining to hear that strength of opinion on College Game Day if he was still on there with Desmond Howard, right? That would have been fun to watch, the back and forth of those two.
Chad, I'm taking the Broncos tonight, or excuse me, the Bills against the Broncos tonight. Bills -7 is my play. Also, Dalton Kincaid, you have him on your fantasy team, right?
I do.
I'm jealous of you because I think take the over number in receptions because the Broncos give up the most on average.
Should I go anytime TD?
From a tight end? Sure, do that.
Should I go Dalton Kincaid? Okay, I'm going to go anytime TD.
Bills, they've got to win. And this is a Broncos defense that's been okay, played well the last 3 weeks, twice against Kansas City. Now they get Josh Allen and company, although it is in Buffalo, Monday Night Football. Bills got to win this game to keep pace in the AFC.
Time. It's winning time, baby.
We're back at it tomorrow. Plenty to discuss. Tomorrow, 3 o'clock Eastern. Hot Buy with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network.